Welcome, everyone, to the August 2023 meeting of the Kentucky Board of Education. Before we call roll and officially open the meeting, I'm going to have a bit of a preamble. First, to welcome our new members. We had a chance to meet Alyssa Riley at the June meeting. She was gracious enough to come down early. So glad she did, and she said, I've done this before, I'm good at this. So maybe not exactly, but she's a welcome member of our team. And our three other new members are here. Sharon said, it feels like we are full, like we finally have the full complement of the board as it was intended to be now that we have Julie, RJ, and Diane. So I'm going to give them a minute to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about what your experience has been and what you hope to accomplish serving on this board. Julie, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to start with you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's truly an honor to serve on our State Board of Education. My background is that I served on the Boone County School Board the prior 4 years, so it's been nice that I've been in e-meetings, and it was easy to kind of get acclimated to being on the board. My role is I'm not an educator, I'm a parent. I've been a very involved parent since my daughter was in kindergarten, and believe in all of our kids and being a voice for all of our kids across the entire state. Just as when I was on the local school board, it was for the entire district, not just the district that I serve. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I've been serving on the Kentucky United We Learn Council, and so I feel like I'm pretty up to speed on that initiative and just very thrilled to be here.
Excellent. We are so glad to have you. Julie hails from Northern Kentucky, as she mentioned, in the Boone County area. If you don't follow her on social media, she's a great follow, especially when it comes to all things parent engagement. So I encourage you to take a look at Parent Camp and the work that Julie does. So glad you're here. RJ, who are you and what are you doing here?
I am RJ Osborne. I'm going to be a junior at Willie County High School in Williamsburg, Kentucky. I'm involved in the baseball program there and in FFA. And I'm also a member of the Student Advisory Council.
Excellent. Any good news from the baseball program in Whitley County?
We did win a state championship this last
year. Congratulations. RJ is a rising junior, and to reach him, board members, he is Ronald.Osborne at our education.ky.gov address. And so he and Julie do have their accounts. Diane does too, and they're up and ready to go. So welcome. So glad you're here. Just a moment, just a personal gratitude to the General Assembly, to Governor Beshear, and to this board for having the vision to include a sitting teacher as an ex officio member of this board, as well as a student. One of the things that we have reveled in under Commissioner Glass's leadership is the opportunity to intentionally engage student voice in an authentic way. And RJ is our third student member, following Soliana Mesfin and Jude Dale. And so we are delighted to have him. They represent different Supreme Court districts or congressional? Supreme Court districts. So we love the geographic diversity that they will bring, as well as that diverse perspective and the experiences of those students that we serve, the 600,000 plus students that we serve across the Commonwealth. So we're delighted that you're here. Thank you. And I don't know if your mom's in the audience, but it always does take a dedicated family member to get our student members back and forth. So we really appreciate her. Please let her know. And Diane.
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Woods. I hail from Harrison County High School is where I graduated from, a native of Cynthiana, born in Kentucky, and went to Fayette County as a teacher of science at Jesse Clark Middle School, left there and was associate principal at Henry Clay High School, and continued on and was principal there at Henry Clay High School, followed by a stint as the middle school director. From Fayette County, I was fortunate enough to go to a small independent school district, which is, you can imagine, a jump from going from Lexington to Campbellsville. And what's a great opportunity to share the knowledge that I gained over the years and moving that district forward. I want to also do a special thanks to the Kentucky Department of Education, which was under the leadership of Dr. Jean Wilhoit at that time, and saw the need for a minority superintendent internship program. I was selected in the second cohort of that group for the program. So I give all kudos to him in the vision of seeing that As far as Dr. Young was saying, Chair Young was saying about what do you hope to accomplish on this tenure on the school board, my goal is to make sure that the same opportunity that Dr. Wilhott afforded to me, which probably never would have happened, is afforded to every student in the state. Whether we're looking very closely at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and that is my mission. There's so many good things going on on this board and in this state that I'm not sure that's getting translated down to the districts the way it is, because I've looked at the portrait of the learner, United We Learn, the L3 groups, and there's just so much. And so I'm hoping to be that voice. And I was asking Chair Young, I said, okay, can I visit schools? Can I go to conferences and find out what's going on? Because
no.
my goal is to be at, you got the dollar, you got the time, you got the dollar, help yourself. But my goal is to be as well informed as I can as we vote on whatever issues come before the board. The kids in Kentucky deserve no less.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We love your heart and the passion for that work, and it is about opportunity and access for every learner. So thank you so much for bringing that passion onto this team. I also asked Commissioner Glass if he would just open with some remarks. So the elephant in the room is that we are all bittersweet receivers of the news that he will be leaving us. Extremely grateful. I promised we would not eulogize him. Extremely grateful for the time we've spent together, but I wanted him to have an opportunity to say a few words outside your regular report, of course, before we open up today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair Young. Thank you, members of the board. It's good to see all of you. I'll be very brief. I just want to express my appreciation and thanks for the opportunity that this board gave me to do this work in the state. It was a lifelong dream to get to do have this professional honor in my home state. I will always treasure that experience. I have loved getting to know and work with the members of this board. The new members that have added now to the expertise and the wisdom that is here is just incredible. I tell the staff all the time that this is a golden era with this board. Enjoy it as long as we can. And it seems that as we've had lunch with the new members coming on that is going to continue. And so I have high hopes and aspirations of what you will do continuing forward. I also want to express my appreciation to the staff at KBE. They've been incredible to work for. I knew from working in other states the reputation that the staff at the Kentucky Department of Education had for excellence, and they've continued to deliver on that. I told the media the other day that I would stack up this state agency against any in the country or the world for their quality. And I've been a lot of places and seen a lot of things, and you really do have exceptional people that work at the Kentucky Department of Education, and looking to future commissioners and what they can expect. That person can expect a heck of a lot of support. This really has been a wonderful job because of the support that's come from this board and the support that's come from the staff of the agency, and so I'm really grateful for that. And I just have a lot of gratitude for the experience, so thank you for that. Also, thank you for coming to Dale Hollow. This is a place that has always been very dear and special to me. I learned to swim and fish with my grandfather right on that point right out there. So this is a place that has a lot of memories for me. And it is a place that's a geographical anomaly. Is that the term from the movie? It is 2.5 hours from anywhere on Earth
You can't
to
get
get
there
here. But it is a beautiful place, and I'm glad that you're able to experience it. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. It's very fitting that we would be at this meeting in a place that is dear to your heart. Those of you at the Sauer Building, you have beautiful views, but nothing like mine right now out that window. So it is a lovely spot. Thank you. And to the team, thank you for
Madam Chair, Member Bloodworth did say that her view was Randy and could maybe see some kind of other.
We will ask for our money back. So
Could we move chairs tomorrow, or?
everybody should shift. You should be able to see out that door. So.
Stacy, what did I do?
Poor Randy. Poor Randy. And seriously, thanks to the team from the department who made the hall down here to, you really can't get there from here. And Secretary Link, thank you so much for making the extra effort to join us today. You honor us every time you go out of your way to be here. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for that. To the members who will be, to the teammates who will be presenting today, just keep in mind that we don't have full internet access, so while we've had a chance to review all of our attachments, if you're referring to attachments, some of us won't actually be able to look at those today. So keep that in mind. We'll see if we can do anything to beef up the bandwidth, but we may be just dealing with this today and tomorrow. I also wanted to take a point of personal privilege just to thank you for the opportunity to have served as chair. We do have in our state board policy term limits on the position of chair and vice chair, so this is my last meeting as chair. It has been a wonderful experience. It's been professionally challenging. It's been a stretch, but it's been a lot of fun. Working with you guys is just tremendous to be able to spend time every other month with folks who have such a like-minded vision and heart for every learner in Kentucky has been an honor and a privilege. I've enjoyed it very much. Working with Sharon, we now finish one another's sentences on a pretty regular basis on every other Friday afternoon, and a lot of texts and phone calls in between. So that's been delightful. I do hope to continue to serve in leadership roles, but the chairmanship has been a really good experience, so I thank you for that. And Sharon, I was going to offer you that same opportunity.
Well, it's been an amazing opportunity to work with all of you, because this board has been such a distinguished board in terms of every constituency group and every facet of the kind of intellectual foundation that we work from, and from the passion that we have for our students, all of them, no matter the age. I think that, I was thinking this morning, be sure to remind your colleagues that Kentucky sends the very best kids that we have to school every day. And our job is to see that they are met with the very best in terms of educational services and opportunities to learn, to develop a vision and a passion for which they are willing to work very hard to achieve, and to see a future in which they can be real active and contributing members of their communities. I view our work through this experience as being stewards of a system that makes sure those services can be afforded our students reliably and with a high degree of quality. I also view us to be guardians of the professional knowledge base that our colleagues use throughout the system to get the job done. Lou, I was really struck on Monday when I had the occasion to read the press release announcing Jason's departure. You talked about his being an expert on learning and a person who could be relied upon for actionable interventions regarding equity. And it occurred to me that we don't often remind ourselves that equity and professional education work are like obverse sides of a coin. You can't be a good, high-quality professional educator unless you know how to include and engage and serve the diverse students that you will encounter, regardless of the qualities of that diversity. And I thought, you know, we need to remind folks that some of this inclusion stuff is not about ideology. It's not even about a moral imperative as much as it is about a professional moral imperative. That is a part of our job as a board, to see that we serve all of our students with that professional moral imperative at the vanguard. Lee, I learned at UK that research is really about the search for truth. And in that professional work, we want to support all of our colleagues as they bring forth the truth as articulated based on high quality, high integrity research. Our job is to make sure that our colleagues throughout the state of Kentucky who meet our students have a chance to know what that research says represents the truth as we know it today, because tomorrow we're going to learn some more, and we can tell you more of the truth. And I would like to see us as champions of truth. Thank you so much
Excellent.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity to serve you.
Excellent. I think the kids might say church.
Well,
I'm not that
pass the
cool.
plate?
I'm not that cool. That's also important in the role, absolutely. Thank you. And Commissioner, we'll have a chance to celebrate our time with you further as we get sadly closer to September 29th. But thank you very much, and thank you for everything that you have meant to us and done for us. I know folks will have lots of other things to say about you when we do that in a more formal way, but we didn't want to let today pass without telling you that we miss you already. But we wish you the best. You're going to be amazing in higher ed. I can't wait to read all about you. All right, Dr. Brewer, if you would, please call the roll.
Joanne Adams.
Here.
Holly Bloodworth.
Here.
Jamie Bowling.
Here.
Patrice McCrary.
Here.
Julie Pyle.
Here.
Randy Poe.
Here.
Sharon Robinson.
Here.
Lee Todd.
Here.
Steve Trimble.
Here.
Diane Woods.
Present.
Lou Young.
Present.
Alyssa Riley.
Here.
RJ Osborne.
Here.
Secretary Jamie Link.
Here.
Chair, you do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The first item of business is internal board business, a summary of the minutes from June 6th, regular meeting, day 1, June 7, regular meeting, day 2, and the KBE Awards Committee have been included in your materials to review in advance. Do we have any corrections, additions, or changes to these minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
I make a motion we approve.
Excellent.
second.
Thank you, Ms., on a motion from Ms. Bowling and second from Ms. Bloodworth. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Also, in internal board business, we will be hearing nominations and then conducting an election of the Kentucky Board of Education Chair and Vice Chair. Kentucky Revised Statute 156.029 requires that the KBE elect a chairperson at the first regular meeting of each fiscal year. Therefore, at this time, we will take nominations from the floor and proceed with the election of a new Kentucky Board of Education Chair and Vice Chair. At this time, nominations are now in order for the office of Chair of the Kentucky Board of Education. Oh, thank you.
For Sharon to accept this chair.
Excellent, thank you. On a motion from Dr. Poe for Sharon Robinson to serve as chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. Any discussion?
I just think she'll make a great chairperson, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's a great discussion. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Chair Young, we'll need to
Have
call.
further nominations
There we go. Perfect.
for
Thank you.
the position of the, oh, I'm sorry, Meredith. Oh, okay. Excellent, thank you. Proceed. Any other nominations for the position of chair? Hearing none, at this point, I would close nominations, and given that we have one name on the slate, do we have a motion to approve? And, oh, I probably didn't need a second on the nomination. That's what I did wrong. So sorry. A motion to approve the slate and elect Sharon Robinson as chair of the Kentucky Board of Education.
I'll move that.
Okay, excellent. So we have on a motion from Ms. Adams and a second from Dr. Todd. Now further discussion. My apologies, team. All right, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Robinson. And pick up on the script on the top of page 3, my friend. I'm just going gonna put my feet up.
Take that up real quick.
Boy, oh boy. See, I can't even turn the page. Ah, goodness. Thank you, colleagues, for this honor. Now, nominations are in order for the office of Vice Chair of the Kentucky Board of Education. Are there, now, the floor is now open for nomination.
Have a nomination.
Okay, Steve,
I'd like to nominate Lou Young as vice chair.
is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, thank you. Any further nominations? Given that there is only one name on the slate, is there a motion to approve the slate and elect Lou Young as Vice Chair of the Kentucky Board of Education?
I so move.
Patrice, thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Holly, thank you so much. Is there further discussion on this motion?
I see no reason to separate the dynamic duo.
And I believe their continuity of leadership is most important going forward in this coming year and years to come.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of electing Lou Young to serve as Vice Chair of the Kentucky Board of Education, please,
Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry.
please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
and
Thank you
thanks
so
much. Boy, oh boy, this is really, congratulations, Vice Chair Young, and it's going to be a pleasure continuing our work together.
So do we do, is there one more step? No, okay, all right, good.
Chair Robinson,
Yes, please.
I would like to
Patrice.
say thank you to Lou Young for her leadership during this time. Thank you for expanding my vocabulary, because almost every board meeting I had to look up a new word. And I think I'm going to get to do the same thing with our chair. So thank you for time spent.
Well, thank you. And I am really excited that we do get to stay together another year. We talked about that as important, Jamie, as we move forward, thinking about how we can bring as much stability to the team and to the department in this, as we move into interim and search. So I think it's an opportunity for us to just continue to make forward motion and progress rather than holding back and waiting, so.
Well, you know, one of the hallmarks of Lou's leadership has been frequent contact with all of you. And I just want you to know, my number is a 202 number. So when you see that pop up, it's not spam. It's probably, I do think that is a part of our culture of working together and collaboration that has been cultivated by Lou in a way that I hope to continue. So it really has been, you've been more involved in so many dynamics because of that frequent contact. So we want to keep that as a part of what we do. Yes, Dr. Todd?
I just want to say, we've all noticed how hard both of you have worked on the roles that you've occupied and how much passion you have and how you've led us through some interesting situations. And I'm just thankful that you're willing to do it again and appreciate that very much. And as Jamie said, I think the continuity is extremely important, especially as we go through this next phase. And but just one big thanks for what you've done up to this point and for willingness to continue.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I would like to thank Lou for your superb leadership in the time that I've been on the board. You have a very special way of making every person feel valued, and not everybody can do that. And lastly, I'd like to thank you for helping me learn a gazillion million educational acronyms.
Alphabet soup, Jamie, thank you.
I feel as though we have been blessed with the leadership and the participation of all of you. And Jason, your guidance, your executive management has brought us a long, long way to what is a really very rich, substantive agenda for our retreat. But we begin with further board business. we propose to create 2 new standing committees. One committee we'll call the State Schools, and a committee called Teaching and Learning / United We Learn. We would formally identify the chairs of those committees at this point, asking Randy Poe to serve as chair of the State Schools Committee and Holly Bloodworth to serve as chair of the Teaching, Learning, United We Learn Committee. And we'll also ask Patrice McQuarrie to continue to chair the Awards Committee. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the creation of 2 new standing committees, the State Schools Standing Committee, charged with reviewing and advising the full board on all policy matters related to the governance and operations of the Kentucky School for the Blind, Kentucky School for the Deaf, and the area technology centers operated by KBE, and the additional United We Learn Standing Committee, charged with reviewing and advising the full board on all policy matters related to United We Learn and KDE's efforts to transform school experiences to assure deep and authentic learning experiences for all students. The motion will also include the dissolution of the curriculum and the operations standing committees, the continuance of the awards committee, and the standing committee membership that we will discuss shortly. So may I have a motion to establish the 2 new committees, reauthorize the awards committee, and dissolve the old curriculum and operations committee?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Holly. Is there discussion?
This
I
might
would-
be when we could invite people to choose
Yeah.
one, yeah.
This is one of the expectations of board participation is service on one standing committee, and we've been discussing this possibility with board members informally. I would now like you to make your wishes known as to the committee on which you wish to serve. I promise that it will be as rich a learning experience as you could imagine, as I experienced working with Dr. Todd on the operations committees. Believe me, I did not expect to learn anything interesting about bus schedules and school renovation plans, but it was. And so, given that experience, I don't make that as a faint promise, I make it as a faithful one. And ask now for you to indicate what you would like to, how you would like to serve. Steve?
I will serve on Dr. Poe's committee, if that's okay.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, we may first, since there's a motion on the table to create
Oh.
the 2 new committees and abolish the 2 old ones, go ahead and call for a vote on that, and then we can establish
Thank you,
the
Todd.
membership.
Good point. Good point. If you will, could I have a vote on the motion to dissolve the old committees and establish the new? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Great, the motion passes, and we have our 2 new committees. I think that's wonderful. Now we need to fill out our roster. We have, the awards committee seems to be pretty well-staffed. We have 1 additional volunteer, in addition to Patrice as the chair, Joanne Adams and Lou, and Diane Woods has indicated an interest in serving on that committee. Lee?
I'd like to serve on Holly's committee.
Aha,
Oh, excellent.
great.
Chair Robinson, I would like to serve on the teaching and learning.
Oh, good, Julie. Thank you so much.
I would like to choose that one as well.
Chair Robinson, I'd like to serve on a committee that deals with the area technical schools. I'm not sure which committee.
That's, Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joanne?
Teaching and learning.
And, yes.
I'll do teaching and learning, please.
So I will sign up for state schools.
And I will do the same.
Jamie?
I was going to say teaching and learning, but that seems to be pretty full. If you could use me someplace else. That's my preference, but I'm willing to
I think
move.
that's good. That'll work. We'll make room. RJ?
I would like to join the state schools room if that one has room for me.
Good for you.
Baseball
I have-
fans, aren't we?
Yeah, so that's 6 on one and 7 on the other.
Yeah. Please.
As the least qualified person, in the room, but with our focus on technical education, I'll serve on that committee.
You rounded it out.
Fabulous. So, we have a full roster. This is so cool.
Yeah.
So we have, with Dr. Pohl serving as chair on the state schools, we have Steve Trimble, Diane Woods, Sharon Robinson, Lou Young, R.J. Osborne, and Jamie Bowling.
Jamie Link.
Jamie Link. Jamie Bowling is on the other committee. And on Holly's committee, United We Learn, we've got Lee Todd, Julie Powell, Patrice, Joanne, Alyssa, and Jamie Bowling. Got it. Fabulous. That will facilitate our work significantly. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, Dr.
Oh,
Thompson.
I did have Dr. Todd?
No, Dr. Thompson.
Oh, Dr. Thompson.
Joey
We'll have to
Thompson.
get his,
For a continuum, yeah.
okay, thank you very much.
So now we'll need to vote for the membership as identified.
Now we need to vote to accept the membership of our two standing committees and the awards committee. May I have a motion in that regard?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion regarding the committee assignments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to accept the committee roster, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? The roster has been approved. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve. At this point, Secretary Link, we welcome you. We appreciate your presence with us so much, and we ask now that you would give us your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for accommodating the agenda since I need to head back tonight. But congratulations to both of you on your new roles. And Commissioner, you've been a great partner. You've been a great leader. Michigan's gain is Kentucky's loss, but we wish you nothing but the best, and the Education Labor Cabinet appreciates all you've done. So thank you for that. My report will be relatively brief. It's been 1 year since the Labor Cabinet and the Education Workforce Development Cabinet merged. It has gone pretty smoothly, all things considered, with a few bumps in the road, which was merging two cabinets is not a normal thing in state government, but thanks to a great staff and great support, it's gone quite well. It continues. Effective July 1 of next year, the cabinet will absorb the Division of Disability Determination Services from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. They deal with Social Security issues. But we've gone from a 700-person labor cabinet to about a 2,000-person cabinet once DDS comes over. So I guess the only constant is change. So we continue to change and grow, but I think our mission is intact, and workforce development and meeting the very robust economic development that Governor Beshear has brought to Kentucky, along with the Cabinet for Economic Development and so many other local and regional partners. We've got the jobs in Kentucky now, and now we need to fill those jobs. So working with the Department of Education, certainly, particularly Dr. Hargis and Career and Technical Education, we have a big task ahead of us, but I feel like we have a great team working on it. Dr. Hargis has joined us. We've formed kind of a collaborative with the Economic Development Cabinet, with the Council on Post-Secondary Education, primarily KCTCS, along with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. We all have workforce initiatives that our cabinet and all these other partners have been working on, including the Department of Education. And I felt like it was important that we try to maximize our resources when it comes to workforce development. We all have workforce professionals across the state, and they're calling on employers and working with school systems and with trade schools and apprenticeship schools, trying to marry employers with workers. But what we found in some cases, with the same workforce professionals were calling on the same employers multiple times, and there was redundancy. So I think with better collaboration and communication, perhaps we can do a better job of maximizing our workforce efforts in addressing various employers' needs. I think, too, addressing the barriers to employment is so important. And I would contend that things like childcare and transportation are two major barriers to people being able to get into the workforce, or perhaps having left the workforce and then back into the workforce. So certainly we are strong proponents of the governor's universal pre-K program. There's obviously an educational component to that, but I would also contend there's a great workforce component to that as well. And then we're working with various state cabinets and agencies on reentry employment for those that have been criminally or involved in the criminal justice system. How can we help with the training needs to close the skills gap for people coming out of incarceration and preparing them while they're in the jail or the institution, so that when they are released, hopefully they have a job waiting for them when they walk out. It's called the Jobs on Day One program. And not only, I think, does that help that individual support themselves and perhaps a family, but it could also address recidivism and maybe falling back into unfortunate circumstance. So we're really looking at that, and the same is true for substance abuse individuals. How can we help them not only with their substance abuse issues, but with any training or education needs they might have, in order to help them and working with employers and getting employers to take that chance to take on a little more risk with some of these individuals, to give them that opportunity. So that is a large part of our focus. Certainly working with young people in primarily secondary education, but I also think with primary education as well, as getting young people thinking about, I couldn't have thought about it when I was in 7th or 8th grade or freshman in high school, but thinking about what they want to do professionally, and assisting them along that path. And certainly we want young people to go into post-secondary education first and foremost, but if they're not so inclined, how can we help them get into a good career path, whether it be full-time or part-time, maybe working and going to school at the same time. And there are plenty of programs, and Dr. Hargis, you're an expert on this, and that's why we've asked her to help with this collaborative that we formed. But we just have such a great demand for qualified workers now that I think the opportunity is there. And what we're seeing with the wages that are being paid in many of the industries now because of the market condition, there's a good living to be made with that. And then I'd be remiss to not mention apprenticeship programs. Once young people leave secondary education, getting them, if they so wish, getting them into good quality apprenticeship programs where they can earn while they learn skilled trades. But apprenticeship now covers teaching and healthcare and childcare and many other perhaps non-traditional trades like plumbing and welding and electrical and so on. So it's a great task, but I think we have the right partners to work on this. And if everything goes according to plan in November, we're going to keep that train rolling down the tracks, and looking forward to that. One thing I would mention on a rather sad note, I think I've mentioned before the Everybody Counts program. That was the governor's brainchild a couple of years ago, and tragically, our executive director of that program, Kanina Porter from Louisville, passed away unexpectedly in June. And at 40 years old, it's way too soon. As a 61-year-old, that's way too soon. But I think one of her legacies, in addition to building a robust program, was building a great team. So with her unfortunate passing, the rest of the team is stepping up, and I believe we have the quality of team members that the program won't miss a beat going forward. And last year we expanded the program to 5 counties: Jefferson, Shelby, Fayette, Scott, and Franklin. And for the upcoming school year, we've been in discussions with other school systems. We'll work with KDE or keep you in the loop on that. But we would like to expand into Eastern Kentucky, where there's perhaps not the opportunity, the career opportunity that we see in other parts of the state, but we want to do whatever we can to assist the East Kentucky region. We're also looking around the Bowling Green, Warren County area because of all the, obviously the battery, electric vehicle battery production going on there, but also into Western Kentucky. We're looking around Christian County and that area. So it's a very exciting time. We think this has great promise. Many of the superintendents are calling us now saying, how do we get into this? We would like to explore this further. We are working on a playbook. The goal is to have basically the manual that we can hand over to the local workforce, economic development folks, along with the education professionals to form that team to implement that relationship between the employers and the school system. And in many cases, if not most, the relationship is already there with a lot of employers. We just want to try to enhance that and grow that even more. So with that, obviously we're all approaching the 2024 legislative session. We are going through, I'm sure as the department is as well, we're going through our legislative agenda and priorities and working with the governor's office on that. I'm a little frustrated with my former chief of staff and general counsel, who was tapped to lead the governor's medical cannabis task force. And of course, he came and took my legislative liaison and my deputy general counsel with him. So we're a little shorthanded right now, but we're building up the team again, and that is a critical program for the Commonwealth on many fronts. So we're happy to support Sam Flynn and his team as they stand up this new program. And I only ask that perhaps I could go to one of the medical cannabis conventions with them at some point and see what that's all about. But a lot of good things going on, a lot of great opportunity in Kentucky, and we're just happy to be a part of it and happy to have the department as an arm-in-arm partner in this. And certainly our cabinet stands ready to assist the department with anything as we go through some transition and things. We are there to assist any way we can. So I'm happy to address any questions you might have, and Madam Chair, that's my report.
Thank you so much, Secretary Link, and thank you again for kind of keeping us informed. Let me just ask, can you give us a top-line assessment of where you see the biggest growth opportunities, and do you recognize, or are there other links that we can make in education to help our kids see a broader vision of the future and greater possibilities as economic development is really alive and well across the Commonwealth?
It is. It's really, I've been in state government since 1985, or around it at least. And to my recollection, I've not seen a period of economic growth like we have right now. And I'm biased, but that's a great compliment to the governor and our economic development folks. But I think the Everybody Counts program, or something to that effect, it's building the relationship between education and the employers. I think a lot of times in the past, employers have just expected people to come to them and apply for their jobs. They have the jobs, they put out vacancy announcements, and people apply for them. With the low unemployment and with the tens of thousands of people that we have in Kentucky that are eligible to be in the workforce but aren't, how do we address that gap? And for the young people in particular, how can we open their eyes to career opportunities? And I'm not saying the department has been doing that all along. It's how can our cabinet assist and grow that effort? And that's one reason I wanted to include the chamber in our collaboration, because they represent the employer community. And sometimes we might not have the same ideas for how we address that, but I think the end goal is the same. I think the end goal for the General Assembly, certainly for the governor and our administration, is to get people into good paying jobs where they can make a living wage, they can support themselves and their families, they have benefits, and I would love to hear from the department, and Dr. Hargis, perhaps what you're seeing with graduating seniors. What are their plans? I've been to a few events, and there seems to be a great level of interest from graduating seniors to go straight into the workforce. And I see that as perhaps a great benefit. You know, I guess maybe once they get into the workforce and they see if they can pursue further education, and perhaps their employer might assist them with pursuing that education. We will be having an event on August the 22nd in the Rotunda along with KCTCS called the Education First Employers Network, where employers have made a pledge to assist new employees with their educational desires. But for young people, what more can we do to expose them to the various job opportunities that are available? What technical education, what apprenticeship programs might be available to them, things that perhaps they've not considered in the past. And I think a large part of it too is educating the parents. That you know, no offense, Dr. Todd, but my child has to go to college in order to get a good job. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. We certainly want them to, But there are skilled positions out there that require more technical training, apprenticeship training, things like that. Some of our evidence is that parents are part of the education of what careers are out there, and not necessarily hanging their hats solely on post-secondary education. So, that's where I think the partnership with KDE is going to be so important, is how can we make inroads, and at what age? Is it 7th grade or 8th grade or whatever? If we wait until they're a senior, obviously, that might be too late. At least it might impede them going forward. But if we can get them thinking about it earlier as to what they want to do, that would be probably more efficient and helpful. So, again, I think this partnership between the cabinet and the department, as well as some of these other workforce partners, is going to be so vital.
Lots of rich discussion. It could go on and on. Are there other questions or comments?
I have one question, Madam Chair. Back in the day, we had Jobs for Kentucky Graduates, JKG.
JAG, yes.
And now there's JAG Kentucky.
Yes.
How active is that in our school districts? How many school districts have that program? This sounds perfect for what you're talking about.
Well, as a fellow Cynthiana native, by the way, yes, we are having discussions with JAG on what we can do to further enhance that program and get it into more school districts. And I also want to be conscious and respectful that we're not interfering with school curriculum, school operations, things like that. We want to be a good partner. But anything we can do to help a district or individual schools, for that matter, learn more about career opportunities that perhaps the cabinet can assist with, we want to do that. And then one of our director of employer and apprenticeship services was involved with JAG when he was a high school teacher, so he knows it very well.
Yes,
Another connection.
Yeah, another connection. I serve on the Kentucky JAG board and also on the national board. And they were just here for a national meeting of the trainers, the specialists. And there were 650 JAG specialists from all across the country. But they also released the JAG performance report, and this year, instead of winning 5 for 5, JAG Kentucky won the 6 of 6 award because a new standard was added related to connectedness. And this requires the specialists to stay with the JAG students 18 months after they have graduated or otherwise been credentialed, and to extend our ability to track and understand the impact of the program. But I am happy to report that JAG Kentucky is now working with the department as an optional elective in the CTE program. But we're always exploring ways to deepen the partnership. So,
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Todd.
Yeah, I really applaud the combination of the two cabinets. I think that education and workforce go hand in hand. And I'm not offended by saying that everybody doesn't need to go to college. I had two companies. One company, 80% of my employees were vocationally trained.
Right.
The other 80% were four-year graduates or above. What I'm concerned about is that there's an awful lot of discussion about filling the jobs that are coming to Kentucky, and I applaud the governor in doing that. But we've got to be able to challenge kids to do more than fill the jobs that they see out there right now. We don't have enough math teachers and science teachers to challenge kids to think deeper than they're going to be told to think. They're said you go to, I was fortunate. I'm from Arlington, Kentucky, town of 2,000 people, didn't have trigonometry in high school. Ended up getting to go to UK and then go to MIT. Came back from MIT and taught at UK. My first year, the students would ask me, what are some differences between here and MIT? That's where, for one thing, you're walking through the student lounge on Monday morning, they're not talking about basketball. They're talking about changing the world. Secondly, they didn't come to MIT expecting to work for somebody else all their lives. I said, y'all want to go to college and get a job. They want to go to college and create jobs. Michael Dell created Dell Computers. Steve Jobs and Wozniak, I guess, started Apple Computer. Bill Gates and Paul Allen started Microsoft. Kentucky should have had the best tobacco harvesting equipment in the world, but we didn't know how to invest in people, and we didn't know how to tell them to think bigger than go out and get a coal mining job, get a tobacco hauling job, whatever. We should have had the best coal processing equipment. Where's Caterpillar headquarters? Adjacent states, not here. We have not invested in our people. We've not invested in education. And we can't take the risk of putting other people's ideas together all of our lives. We got to have some of our own ideas. And we can do that. Not all of them. And I think we have not I got in trouble as a sophomore at Murray State University when I came back to my hometown and said that not everybody needs to go to college and get a job. The parents at that time, that's all they thought their kids could do. But there are jobs out, really good jobs out there. And I hired quite a few of those people. But there are also times right now when I think if we take a chance and invest in some of these areas to teach the kids a stronger understanding of math and science, for instance, where we hardly have any teachers, that we may find some of those people who say, hey, why don't I take two of these people, let y'all come out here, I'm going to find some money, we're going to start a company. We're going to do our own thing. There is some more of that going on now. There is some capital structure in Kentucky. 1983, when I started, there was zero venture capital in Kentucky. Banks would only loan you money according to how much your house was worth. My house wasn't worth much. And so you've got to think to that level, and all I'm challenging everybody to think of a little bit, is there's a golden thread going through Kentucky possibly. Most of that's out in California, Colorado, working for Hewlett-Packard, working for the big companies. They couldn't find jobs in Kentucky. We can get some of those people back, and we can form our own companies. So let's make sure that we don't take all the money to help people find a job. Let's help some people create a job.
You're here.
Madam Chair, so my son had the pleasure of participating in the Governor's Scholars for Entrepreneurs the last 3 weeks, and exactly what you're talking about. To watch 100 kids on stage make a pitch for a product or service they invented, the professionalism, the critical thinking. Those kids were working from 8 or 9 in the morning till 6 or 7 at night. It's those kinds of programs that if we double down on is what's going to spur Kentucky and move us forward.
Started quite a conversation, and I know we could go on.
My apologies for.
No, I mean, I feel it generating a lot of good thinking, and you certainly recognize the deep interest in this, knitting this together. I mean, this is our economy that we're talking about, and I dare say it is also a big measure in the degree to which we're confident we're going to have social peace. So thank you. Let's continue this, board members. We do have a few action items. Secretary Link, I hope you're going to stay with us through the day, at least a part.
I am through the day.
Great, great.
But I'm afraid I have to get back because we have some memorial activities tomorrow.
Wherever you're going is 2.5 hours away, so.
And I plugged it into my GPS, and it was 2 hours and 33 minutes.
Is that called centrally located?
Or the black hole, I'm not sure.
I would like us to turn now, if you will, to our action discussion agenda and begin with the Bracken County School District request for a waiver, and this item will be presented by Associate Commissioner Robin Kenny, KDE Division Director Che Ritter, and do we have, oh, the two of you, thank you. That's.
Thank you, Chair, I appreciate it. I'm going to speak on the best of my ability, speak on behalf of Bracken County, who couldn't be here today. This is a traversing property easement waiver request. We did one of these last board meeting for Henry County. That was an oil pipeline. This was water, a little safer. And basically, they're wanting to buy an adjacent piece of property north of their central office. They're going to use it for some practice ball fields. Staff saw no issues with this request. They were supportive of it. And the issue is our regulation requires if there's a easement traversing the property, we have to bring it to the board for a waiver due to that easement. Be glad to entertain any questions if anyone has any.
Are there questions regarding this request? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the request for waiver. The Bracken County School District request for waiver of 702 KAR 4:180. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Dr. Poe and Dr. Todd, thank you. Any further questions, discussion, comments? I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve the Bracken County School District request, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. The motion carries.
Thank you.
We move now to this is the school district lease agreements. Again, Associate Commissioner Robin Kinney and Jay Witter, along with Executive Advisor Matt Ross. Will present this agenda item.
I think I drew the short end of the straw on this one. My name's Matt Ross. I'm the policy advisor in the Office of Finance and Operations. The proposed regulation 702 KAR 340 is for the approval of school district lease agreements. KRS 65.944 requires the KBE to promulgate a regulation establishing a procedure for the Commissioner of Education to approve leases above $100,000. So that's what this regulation does. The goal here is to sort of streamline and centralize the process. Before, leases could come in, depending on the topic of the lease, could go to different offices. This uses a form created by our Office of Legal Services, a local board attorney certification form. So the local school district, their attorney goes over the lease, looks at our form, which has all the components that should be in a lease or should not be in a lease. They fill out the form, sign it. Then the lease and the forms, the completed form, go to the commissioner, and it's reviewed. And if it's, and then we have 30 days upon receipt of the lease to act on that, to either approve it or disapprove it. And if it's disapproved, then there's an opportunity for reconsideration once any defects are cured. So that's basically all this regulation does.
Any questions regarding this request? Yes, Randy?
So is it, help me out, is this mostly for like technology and that, or for buildings?
It could be for either.
Mostly technology, from my experience in the past. It's probably, I don't know.
Because I was going to say, for buildings, typically you could only enter into a lease for 1 year, and then it had to be renewable. But if I'm reading this, you can now.
Included on that form. I think that's included on the form. It's one of the things that must be in the lease.
Okay. Because I was reading, I mean, there's multiple attachments, the certification, I didn't know if that separated that out, so.
Yes.
I thought the KRS said you can only do it 1 year and it had to be, so, and I know a KRA can't overcome that, that's all.
Right. And we did take this in front of LSAC, and it was reviewed and unanimously approved at their last meeting.
Further comments and questions? If not, I'd ask the board to entertain a motion to approve 702 KAR 3:340, approval of school district lease agreements. Is there such a motion?
I make a motion, we approve.
I second.
Jamie? And who was the second? Steve? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Robin, you're going to stay right there, right?
I sure am.
Chair Robinson, before we move on to that item, we actually have a correction to the Bracken County waiver. The wrong regulation was listed, so we'll need to have another vote with the correct regulation number. I apologize. So it is not 4180, it should be 4050.
4050. Okay, board members, if you will. Todd, are we good to go?
If you just entertain a motion to correct the previous action of the board and note the new regulation number.
Appreciate that. I would ask the board to entertain a motion to correct the previous action regarding the Bracken County request to correct the regulation addressed. If I could have such a motion. Okay, Dr.
Second.
Poe and Mrs. McQuarrie. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you for catching that. We're good with that. And now we go to the matter of student attendance. This is an amendment to Regulation 702 KAR 7:125. Commissioner Robin Kenny and Che, we're happy to see you. And Matt, did you draw the short straw on this one as well?
No, actually I did.
Okay. Go to,
So today, this is really the Office of Finance and Operations show today. Thank you so much for having us. This is 702 KAR 7:125 regarding pupil attendance. It's an amendment to the current regulation, and it's a very simple amendment, really designed with the thought process that Matt explained. We are looking at our regulations to see about eliminating where we are not adding value to certain processes in our office. So especially as that relates to our local school districts. So what this does is amend the process for early entrance into the primary program by removing an unnecessary KDE approval. The substance of the proposed amendment is limited. It just looks at changes where a student may enter the first level of primary program when they are under the age of 5, or by August 1st, which is that entrance date, and for entry into the second level of the primary program when they are under the age of 6 by August 1st of the year of enrollment. So currently the way it works is a school district can enroll a child that's under that age, and they do an appropriate level of review of the student's academic, social, and developmental progress. And then that then comes to KDE for review and approval. The amendment to the regulation is found in your packet on page 6, section 6.3C, so it's a very short amendment. And we are recommending that that language be removed. Districts will still be required to follow all the processes that they currently follow up to that point where they would typically send it to us. So they're still going to have a local board policy about how this works. They will still have an evaluation team that looks at the student and makes that quality decision on behalf of the student to be enrolled. The district will continue also to maintain documents and records of their process, and when KDE comes and does attendance audits, as we periodically do, we will look at that process and ensure they follow the appropriate procedures when we do an attendance audit. The other thing with this regulation, you'll see there is a home hospital form attached to the attendance regulation. And really all that we're doing there is trying to make the boxes a little bigger. We've had a lot of comments from people that the data is just too tiny when we go to putting things in the boxes. So the substance is the same, just the formatting of that home hospital form is different. And when we do regulations, when you change a form, you also have to take it through the regulatory process. So this is just to allow this local decision to stay local, and we'll kind of look at the process when we come for attendance audits. I'm happy to take any questions.
thank you so much. Yes, Patrice.
Thank you. Chair Robinson. You start wrapping that around. I'm just curious to know, in the past, have all of the requests been approved that have come through for this? So it's basically just checking yes?
It's basically checking yes, and we just don't think that's a good use of our time, and it's not a good use of the district's time either, to go ahead and get those students enrolled.
I just want to piggyback on Patrice's comment. Over the past 3 years, the three of you and your entire teams have really stepped up to say, we're going to get out of the way of districts. I think since the big conversation that led up to House Bill 678, you guys have really taken that seriously. And as a former district person, it means a lot that you say, we don't need to be in that business. And so this is just one, it's a small example, but it just is an outward example of your all's commitment to do that, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Indeed, indeed. Further comments, questions for Robin and her team? If there are none, then I'd like the board to entertain a motion to approve the amendment to 702 KAR 7:125 pupil attendance. Is there a motion?
Make that motion.
Diane?
Woods.
And Steve, thank you.
Second
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have further comment? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Continuing with this awesome team, we'll now go to the Kentucky Department of Education biennial 2024-26 biennial budget. We have joining at the table will be Division Director Karen Worth to facilitate the budget discussion. And I wish I could see it. I'm missing it out.
I'm using my hotspot so we can share.
Oh, okay.
And
That
you
was
just
smart.
a reminder to Karen that our new members are jumping right in midstream in the budget process, I think.
So for the new members, you're actually coming into the budget process midstream. A bit later, we'll be talking about additional appropriation requests that we will make. That was a hard exercise of prioritization. But this is our stand-up budget with some some aspirations expressed in the budget. And so we will ask that you present that and support a conversation with the board on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you think about this in horse racing terms, we are heading toward the finish line on the biennial budget request for 22-24. Today's presentation, we're going to walk you through sort of the journey that we've been on at a very high level, kind of remind you where we started in February and do a pretty high-level recap. We have a lot of slides, but we're going to go through them quickly. And really for the benefit of our new board members that haven't been with us during this journey, it'll kind of let you know how we build our state agency budget. We build this and make it a submission to the governor's office for consideration of inclusion into the executive branch budget. And our deadline that we have to submit this year has been bumped up a little bit. So we're on a little faster pace than we usually are. Karen's going to walk us through sort of the journey from February to now, and then we'll talk about those important additional budget requests, ABRs. There's another acronym for you if you're getting into the budget lingo now. Additional budget requests are ABRs. And we'll talk about those. The board has done a really good, diligent effort as we've come before you each month, talking about the needs of the department and the needs of our schools and districts. And so since so much of that state funding comes through us to be distributed to our school districts, it's really important that we are advocating on their behalf. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll walk through the journey from February to now.
It seems like a long journey. But we are in the fourth edition of the Robin and Karen Biennial Budget Show, so it is coming to an end. Welcome to the new board members. I'm very, very glad and excited for you guys to be joining us. So this is, like Robin said, and Chair Robinson, you guys are coming in a little bit at the end of the process. So we're going to do our best to recap as we can to bring you guys up to speed. So as Robin indicated, back in February, we began this journey to build our biennial budget request. We are requesting funds for fiscal years 25 and 26 in this request. Fiscal year 24 just started a little over a month ago, so we're moving quickly into the second year of the current biennium. Back in February, we brought to you our 6-year capital plan. As we've mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have 3 state-operated campuses under KDE. We have the Kentucky School for the Blind in Louisville, Kentucky School for the Deaf in Danville, and then we have the FFA Leadership Training Center in Hardinsburg that is under our Office of Career and Technical Education. So our 6-year capital plan is bricks and mortar. It's about facilities. So we brought you that list of need back in February, and I'm going to share that a little bit more with you here in a couple slides. We also did something a little bit different this year than we typically have. Our biennial budget is based on a baseline budget. So we felt like it was important to accelerate the conversation around asking for the things above and beyond the baseline. So back in February, we started having program staff available. We had Associate Commissioner Couch with us to talk about the importance of CATs. And each meeting after, we increased that. We invited our program staff to come to talk to you all about what's important and what they were putting forward so that they could answer whatever questions you had. And that followed suit in June, and now here we are in August, our last get-together before my staff starts running around like crazy. I was looking before I left this morning. We will create 2 binders, about 900 pieces of paper that will be what is called our biennial budget request. So just in a nutshell, that's our journey. We did, as Robin indicated, we used to submit by November 1st, but this past session did pass law that moved it to October 1st. So we're running even quicker. As I indicated, we do prepare our requests based on a baseline. The baseline budget would continue to sustain all of the current services that we provide right now. So we start with our base, and then there's some other steps within the budget that I'll talk about here briefly. And then the most important part is that ABR discussion that we have been so deep into the last few months. I indicated, or Dr. Todd actually had asked me about our baseline budget for this fiscal year. So I included a slide to kind of show what our budget is for fiscal year 24. And we tried to chunk it into those categories that are familiar to you all. Of course, our largest appropriation is the Support Education Excellence in Kentucky appropriation, or SEEK. Approximately $3.2 billion of our budget goes directly 100% to school districts. We also wanted to show what dollar amount stays at the Frankfurt-based KDE operations level. When you think about a total budget of $6.4 billion, around $36 million supports personnel and operating functions at KDE. We also pulled out that little group called Flex Focus. Flex Focus is a group of grants that districts receive, and really the only thing that's kind of unique about Flex Focus is that districts are able to move funds within those grants. Flex Focus includes safe schools, extended school services, and state-funded preschool. So if a district has more need in the ESS area, they're able to move some funds maybe from another pot in order to support that at the level that they need. We also wanted to pull out just all the other grant programs. So you hear us talk about Read to Achieve, Gifted and Talented, Math Achievement. All of those are funds that go to our school districts or to education partners. And that's around $304 million. We also receive an appropriation of, right now it's $850 million for health and life insurance. We at the department, we make all payments on behalf of all school district personnel for their health and life insurance. We pay that directly to the Department of Employee Insurance. $4.5 million in general fund that we receive directly from the General Assembly. We also receive some restricted funds that could be maybe private grants that we receive. We've received some Bill and Melinda Gates grants in the past, and also federal funds. If you were to look at this same type of slide from 2 years ago, you're going to see that our federal fund allotment has increased substantially, and that is completely tied to the additional COVID-19 funds that we've received over the last couple of years. So baseline budget chart in a nutshell. The next is just a visual. We like to show that, KDE Frankfurt base is not taking a large portion of the KDE budget. 97% at least of our budget goes out to education partners or to school districts. So a very small amount stays in Frankfurt. The second piece of the budget request process is what we refer to as a defined calculation. And defined calculations are costs that we don't control. Those are established and set by the agency that administers the service. So for example, quarterly, we make a payment to pay for the rent of the Sauer building. We've got, a floor and a half, and we pay rent every quarter for that. We also pay our utility bill. Defined calculations kind of the same as what you have, if you're a homeowner or you rent, you can't control what the cost is. You're really dependent on what the price is that someone else sets. Those are set in our budget request, and we will request those on an individual set of forms. Just to talk a little bit more about the 6-year capital plan, I did include the chart that we showed you guys in February. I just want to say that we have been very, very lucky the last couple of bienniums. We have received more money than I know that we've ever received in capital. We have finally gotten to the point on our state schools that we are actually renovating instead of repairing all the time. We finally brought everybody up to where we're getting into preventive maintenance instead of having to put Band-Aids on things. So we are extremely grateful to the General Assembly and the Governor's Office for giving us those funds. And we still are pretty loaded with HVAC money right now. So
We're
trying
really busy on HVAC right
yeah,
now.
if we could get an HVAC unit,
And
we'd be
roofs.
happy. So yeah, roofs and HVAC. So we asked for things in pools, and the pools give us the opportunity to be flexible because, as soon as you plan on doing this, a pipe's gonna bust and you're gonna have to divert your attention back over somewhere else. So we typically ask for things in pools, and it's really, really been beneficial to us, and we will continue that practice moving forward. So now we're to the ABR, so I'll turn it back to Robin, and she can lead us through that discussion.
So let's talk about ABRs now. This is the piece that really we've been bringing in front of you since February each month, talking about the additional needs of the department, school districts, students, staff. Additional budget requests, what that really means is anything that, let's say a program has grown since the last time we got funding, then we would ask for an additional budget request. Or if it's a brand new program, something that we've recognized that our schools and districts or KDE needs, but we don't have the money to pay for it yet because it's not built into our baseline. Or if we fund replacements, meaning that for some of the projects that we'll talk about, there were federal funds that were available, ESSER funds that really helped us kind of fill in the gaps of things, but those federal funds are going to go away. And so we'd still like to continue those services to our schools. So it kind of falls into 3 big buckets. We have included in your packets all the budget requests, the additional budget requests that have come before the board in this preparation and recommendation for our budget. All of these were received favorably by the board. I think every time we had anyone talking at the table with you about a certain need to really help our school districts progress and students progress and achieve all that we can achieve, we had our program offices come and present to you, and everyone's head nodding up and down. And so I want to share with you and to make it clear as we submit, every single one of the additional budget requests that were presented to you with your head nodding up and down will be presented as part of our budget request for the executive branch budget consideration. So all of these, we have 19, and that's a lot, but we have a lot to do. We have a lot in our schools that are going on. Education is both deep and it's broad, and so we have a lot of territory to cover. And anytime we're talking about 600,000 students and 171 districts and the buildings and everything else, the numbers get big very quickly, and there are a lot of ground we have to cover. So all 19 of these will be included. And so I'm not going to go through all the ones that are in your packet, but you can kind of flip through and walk down memory lane on all the ones that we talked about. I think what our action item really for today and where we need your guidance and help is really prioritizing. And you might say, okay, if we're including all these, why do we have to prioritize them? Well, number one, the budget instructions tell us we have to prioritize them. So that is budget instructions that are developed by the Office of the State Budget Director in conjunction with the Legislative Research Commission. So they tell us we have to prioritize our ABRs. The other thing is it really helps you as a board, as you are advocating for these additional budget requests, to know what your top priorities are. They're all important. They're all important or they wouldn't be on our list, right? But it's really important that you all can speak with one voice, and as advocates at the department, and Brian Perry, our legislative liaison, he can have an understanding and comprehension of kind of the ones that are bubbling at the top. So we tried something a little different this year, and I want to thank you for your participation in that. We sent out a survey to you and asked you to kind of rank. And the comments I heard back was, this is really hard. You know, this is a hard thing to do. Because they all are important. It's almost like me asking you, well, tell me which kid is your favorite, right? It's like that. Which kid is your favorite? But keep in mind, they're all important and they all will be submitted. So in your packet, you will see sort of the top 10. And when we talked to you initially, we were hoping to really focus on the top 5. But let me just say, there's nothing unique or special about whether we say the top 5 or the top 10, but it is just trying to get a feel to make sure that you understand and we can all move forward together. So if we can take just a few minutes and we'll walk through sort of the top 10, and I invite discussion, because if you look at this and you say, you know, I've really been thinking about it since I filled out that form, and maybe I want to talk about it a little bit more, I would invite discussion of the board members on any of these and your comfort level on the order that they are now ranking. And of course, you're now seeing the values of your colleagues here. So let's just quickly walk through them. And I will point out some things that at least I've noticed, and we also may talk about sort of some of these kind of all fit together. So the very first one that you all ranked across the board was an increase in SEEK base. Not surprised. SEEK base is the base of state funding for our school districts. And there's been lots of discussions about the dollar amount of base SEEK, whether it's enough, how do we increase that, how do we get more. We have built in the amount that we are requesting at an 8% inflationary factor, and so that's how we got to the number we got. Additionally, SEEK and increasing the base gives districts the most flexibility. SEEK is an allocation method. It is how we determine how much each district gets. And once that district receives it, then they make the local decisions on the expenditure of those dollars which fit their unique needs. So SEEK is the best way to do it, we think, increasing that SEEK base, more money that's going to districts for flexibility. We already heard about a comment from Secretary Link about universal preschool. Very important. We know the importance of early learning of our students and how that impacts their education career. So we have costed that out. It is a big number. This would be for all at-risk 3-year-olds and all eligible 4-year-olds. So a big opportunity for lots of young people in the Commonwealth. The next one was new teacher internship. As we think about, there used to be a program called K-TIP, and this may operate a little bit differently, just a little bit, but the point of this budgetary request is when new teachers come into that classroom, it's really important. I akin it to when I first got out of law school, and you know, they teach you so much when you're in school, and then you go to the courthouse and you don't know how to file a motion. You know, it's sort of like, how do I do that? Who do I talk to? So this is more the practicality of when you step into that classroom and you're like, oh, well, what do I do first? These funds would be to have that 1-year sort of training program of our first-year teachers or those new teachers that come from out of state that haven't been teaching for more than 2 years. And to really take that from the districts. Many districts are doing that right now. They're still operating their version of teacher induction. And again, anytime that we can help from the state level, that frees up money on the back end for them.
Robin?
Yes.
I might just add that you may see other numbers floating around. The KASA CSEP team, for example, has a higher number attached to the new teacher internship. But it's my understanding that Byron and his team proposed, like you said, the 1 year, very similar in scope to the original K-tip. So I think the other number might be as high as 21 million. So this is model dependent in terms of where
Yes.
that $9 million figure comes from.
Absolutely. I think the important thing is, and as we hear of our external partners kind of advocating for that,
Right.
I think it is about we need new teachers to be supported from day one. So it's how can we financially support them so that when they come into the classroom. Thank you, Chair Young. Seek transportation, districts paying a share of Seek transportation, those actual costs. I think we're up to 68% now on our funding, which is better. But that transportation funding really should be funded by the state. And so this is asking for sort of the gap between what we appropriate right now and what it would take to actually fulfill those actual expenses. That also frees up local funds again because they're using their local funds to pay for that. Go Teach and Ed Rising, I'm going to quickly go through these. OELE has really tried to put together a package of things for teachers' recruitment and retention. You know, when you look at the new teacher internship, Go Teach Kentucky, and Ed Rising, all those to support the recruitment and retention of teachers. The Kentucky Education Recovery Fund, this is dollars asked to supplement existing federal funds that we use to support CSI schools, those 5% at the lowest of our schools. And this request is to really help those TSI or ATSI schools. So they need support too, you know, and so this request would be focusing on those TSI and ATSI. KETS funding, Karen talked about Associate Commissioner Couch coming to the table and talking about the need for increased funding for KETS. It's been quite a while since we've had increased funding for KETS, and we actually went backwards a little bit in our funding. And all the wonderful things that we learned during the pandemic specifically about remote learning, our digital coaches, all the support that we live in an electronic environment now. And so we need to be able to support and sustain the ability to have that broadband accessible and available, and the supports from the personnel side as we go to one-to-one and making sure that we have the people there to support technology in our school districts. Additional funding for Read to Succeed, that's Mickey Ray's baby back here. And of course, we know the importance of early learning and literacy. So we are asking for additional funds to support salary of our literacy coaches to help school districts. And then finally, next generation leadership support. This is akin to KPIP, which was the principal program that kind of mirrors the K-tip. The best thing that you can give to a teacher, I think, is a strong leader in their school building that's ready to support them so they can go and do the jobs in the classroom. So we are asking for that. Again, a people support. And so I think OELE has done a really good job coming up with sort of this systematic approach in trying to support the professionals in our school districts. So those are the top 10. I have kind of led you through the theme of the OELE request, all about teacher recruitment and retention. We have talked in the past, do we bundle that together and try to sell it as a package? Or do we sell that separately and independently? So that's a little food for thought as you all have a brief discussion here. But we feel very comfortable with the top 10 that you've provided. All the others are very important as well. But this really helps us as an organization to kind of look forward. So I invite you, if you'd like to have a short discussion on any of the items or the movement on this page of any items. Otherwise, we would just prioritize right down the page.
So thank you so much for helping us with that really horrific. I mean, did you guys think that was a hard assignment? That was so hard. I thought, will I ever get these in the right place?
I also appreciate being told the power of a nod.
So this is an interesting set of priorities. Comments, questions? Dr. Ness?
So I do. One comment, one question. I think I know the answer to this, but on the OELE bundling, two-part question, and that is pools seem to work for us in some ways, so I'm wondering if bundling might be a good idea. And I think just so that other board members know, EPSB, the Education Professional Standards Board itself, doesn't have a budget for programming, so they won't be putting forth annual budget requests, right? So
No, we
anything with education.
That through the department.
Licensure and effectiveness would come from us. So I'm wondering if there might be some wisdom. I'm playing chess with people I don't even know here. So wonder if bundling those might make sense, and if it would perhaps pick up an air of educator workforce. So just a thought there, perhaps for the board's consideration or just to acknowledge what you said. And this is to Karen. We always think she has a magic wand, but there are other priorities on the list that are things in my mind that they just have to be paid. They're just like the light bill, just like the rent. And in those cases, if they don't make the list, if we don't come out as well as we have the last couple of years, you make those things work. Like, we have to give raises to our teachers.
That's correct,
So,
yeah. Step and rank is a perfect example.
Yes.
Of that, and we support that through the KDE budget. We were fortunate to receive step and rank for KSB, KSD, and our area technology centers in House Bill 1. So we're hoping that we get that again. So, but yes, we've supported that year after year, and we'll continue to do so.
I think we also continue to advocate that becomes part of our normal
Yes.
I was gonna say,
personnel.
at what point does it not become part of the, what do we call those? The regular budget?
Our baseline.
Baseline, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the goal, is to get it into our baseline. Of course, that calculation will change, but, personnel costs change every year too.
Right.
But traditionally, it has been housed outside of our personnel allotment. So we keep asking, but until then, it's okay if we get it just a different way. It would just be easier for us that we wouldn't have to go back and advocate every time.
Randy?
Yeah, first of all, happy with the top 10 and some of those things. But one of the things that I guess I'd like for us to think about is, and I think you used the analogy well, that it's like choosing between your kids. Well, we've got our present kids and then our future kids. So I think that one of the things that really concerned me is, if the legislature just says, okay, these are your top 5 and we're just going to top. I mean, I'm really concerned about CAT's funding in relationship to the fact that we went through COVID, we went one-to-one across this building, and that technology out there, the backbone of, we've got the best system in the country for educational technology, but it's rapidly aging from those superintendents that I hear from. So without an increase in funding, I mean, we've been taking a step backward, and if it wasn't for the federal match, we'd really take a step backwards. So that's my concern there. And I know that we can't get here and start playing the different things, but I think we need to consider taking care of our present kids before we're also taking care of future kids in those line item budgets by making sure that, transportation, SEEK, those are priorities. I'm all for the teacher internship. We can't do that without, universal preschool, you can't get a bigger supporter than me in that, but if we're not taking care of the K-12 before we get into preschool, we're also doing a disservice to the 600,000 we have in K-12 right now. So it's a hard priority to choose from. And I guess that's the other thing that I guess with universal preschool is one thing, and then fully funding K is another thing. So that's what I think we'll get that question asked of us, or where does that fall into this mix? Because I don't necessarily see that on our top 10 or in there, making sure that that's, baseline and not just a budget every 2 years.
Right, and because it was included in House Bill 1, we consider it part of our baseline budget.
Okay, so it's in there as a baseline budget. Okay, thank you. And I think that's important to note because
Yeah, that is.
one of our outside partners will ask that real quick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for
And
that.
Secretary Link may know better, certainly knows better than I do, but I've just been hearing from folks who are reading the tea leaves, and it looks like we're in line for the highest rainy day fund figure that we've seen as a state in a long time. So if we are looking at the equivalent of $1.5 billion in requests, if there's ever been a time, Brian, that we could advocate for robust funding, it seems like now's the time to do that, so.
Other comments?
Ever the optimist, just saying.
And as far as that, all the initiatives to recruit and retain teachers, I mean, it's raining.
Yeah.
That's not that is happening now.
Yeah, it's a thunderstorm right now.
It really is. And anything we can do, and I think, I liked the idea of bundling that, because I think just presenting that as retaining teachers and recruiting teachers, I think everyone really sees that, and I think that maybe makes more sense than if we do divide it up. I think it would be easy maybe to toss one of those things aside, whereas if we would just put it all under that umbrella, it seems to me like we might have more luck with it.
If we did that, I don't know how the board would feel about pulling up one of the bottom ones around professional development. If we think about the full experience from attraction to induction to retention, it's a much bigger number, I know, but Brian may be saying shh.
In other words,
galley.
we want it all.
So any way to tie it so that we get it all, that'd be great.
I do sense there is a consensus regarding representing the recruitment and retention work under one umbrella rather than by three separate programmatic themes, if you will, programmatic titles. I think that's a consensus direction. Correct me if I'm wrong. That seems to be the case. And if that were so, I guess under the theme of taking care of what we have, the professional development work relative to, certainly, let me state that differently. The next general theme seems to be, let us take care of what we have now with the necessary upgrades, particularly in the area of technology, and that seems to be a strong consensus. And then if we can bring professional development forward as another way of taking care of what we have, making sure it stays state of the art to the maximum extent possible would be prudent.
So can I ask you a question? So
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand this. So OELE, help me out what that stands for.
The office.
Licensure and effectiveness. Sorry.
Okay, so if we bundle those together, then what you're saying is then we can put that PD up there in that top 10.
I'm suggesting that might be if we had an overarching notion
Right.
of workforce, or educator workforce.
But they're going,
development
I'm
support.
correct, because I would say that when they're in front of the legislature, and if they want that broken down, they can break down OELE to those different numbers. So to me, that's just, that makes good sense to give another category in our top 10 by combining those. Because you're going to break them out with the numbers
Sure.
when they ask for them.
Yes,
And
they will want to
then
know.
they're going to tear
they're
apart,
gonna-
right,
they-
what that
They're
means.
going to want to know how we're going to spend whatever number we give.
I like that. I like your suggestion.
That would pull our CATS funding up.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Higher.
right, right,
Yes.
right.
That seeks it up to,
Yes.
because you're taking those.
Robin, I did just want to clarify. So I know the board members, when they completed their survey, they ranked 23 items. So when you say 19, that is the consolidation of those
Yes.
OELE items. Okay.
I think we're starting to really understand this process a little bit more. It's you know, it's a few times around the block, we're going to get really good at this. But we've had such good support from your office to have these discussions. I mean, Karen, it's been really it has been a journey, but it's been a journey of learning to inform our advocacy. And so, I mean, we've been kind of paying attention, and thank you so much for this product. Any further discussion on our ABRs? I mean, it really does feel like we are at a graduation ceremony here. To embrace this prioritization, this prioritized list is a real accomplishment. It's been
Chair
thoughtful
Robinson,
deliberation.
one question
Yes,
there.
Dave.
The next generation leadership support would be in that bundle that you previously discussed?
I think so.
I think we catch all the OELE.
Yeah.
I think so.
Anything that has OELE as a
Plus-
category.
Plus professional development.
Yes,
Which is, yeah.
And can I ask another question of staff?
please.
Also, the additional ATC funding we received last year is baseline then too, correct? So,
Correct.
okay, so, great. So that's it.
That's good.
Just wanted to make sure. To me, that's our most critical workforce demand things, and when we talked about Gale wins before. So I want to make sure that
It is a
was-
big win if you can get
Oh,
your dollars
gosh.
into your baseline budget. Because
Correct.
we start with baseline, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So historically, if you get it in there, it stays there.
Well, because last year, that was the first time it was increased in 20-some plus
Right.
years almost.
Okay.
But I want to make sure, I guess, is there some kind of percentage increase for at least inflationary costs in those baselines? It's not. Okay, so,
So we will likely have to come back and do an ABR as inflation catches up
yeah, okay.
to grow our existing program.
Or otherwise, we're going to be stale
We'll
like
be
we were for
stagnant.
20
Yes.
years. I mean, because
That's right. We'll be
inflation-
right back where we were.
No different than we're talking about with cats.
Yes.
You've got these backbones there, and somebody's got to take care of them. It's, what we found out in transportation until there was an increase last year, the aging fleet, and it
Right.
becomes a safety issue. I would also say the aging in our cats technology backbone presents safety issues for hackers and everything else if we're not
Right.
updating to the latest equipment
issue.
and the latest software, and I know that's not cheap. So I commend.
Have you been talking to David Cowden?
I would say he sat right there and gave me.
Give the thumbs up.
But being that was my first district job, I can relate to all the people in the field of trying to keep that operating. And just the fact that yesterday alone, our tech group back here took 2 days to get my computer back up from something that was wrong with it, that they had to crash it, rebuild it, and everything. And it literally took a day and a half to get ready for this meeting because of something that occurred on this, technological device. And this is a new one. If I was sitting here with an old laptop, we would have never got there.
I got a question. Of course, I was glad to see Reed to succeed, additional funding in there, and I had it ranked quite a bit higher. And talking to superintendents, and I didn't rank it higher. I don't think I did above Ket, so David, so just. But I did rank it higher, and talking to superintendents, kids that were in kindergarten, first, second, third grade during the pandemic didn't have teachers for a couple of years and standing in front of them, and if the kids can't read, they're going to struggle the rest of their career in education. I just wonder if there's more funding out there that we already have that will pick up a lot of that.
So we do also have Read to Achieve, which is about 15.9 million, I believe, that's in our LARS programs, our Learning and Results Services programs. Those are awarded through a competitive process, which we call a request for approval. or request for application, sorry, and districts can apply for those grants, and they receive a certain dollar amount through a contract from us to support reading in addition to the Read to Succeed program.
It's very important.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Just one question. On the content standards piece that didn't make the top 10, regarding the new standards and trying to train teachers how to teach those new standards, are some of the grant monies that go to the districts, can they use that for that purpose? Or how do we get teachers to teach to the new standards that are supposedly on the books?
So we support that through KDE's budget currently. We do not have any funding for standards. So because it is such an important piece, we do support it through KDE's operating budget. We pay teachers stipends and travel to come to the department or to meet at a location to work on the standards. And I believe that this request is fueled because I think our top 4, Mickey's behind me, I think we have science maybe coming up. It could be a costly, because there's numerous meetings and whatnot, but we support that now through the department's budget.
So some items like that are what we call unfunded mandates. It is a statutory
Very familiar with
requirement.
those. I used to get them all the time, yeah.
Yeah, you're familiar with those, aren't you? And so that's one that we need, we have to do. So we are foregoing something else in KDE's budget in order to fund that. So it still is getting done. And we have to keep reminding the General Assembly when they do those unfunded mandates that once again, we don't have the money to do it, but when we find that money, they believe we do have the money to do it. So we have to just keep plugging along. Many of these things, it takes years and years to try to really convince someone that the need is there.
And if PD goes up on that list, wouldn't that be covered in some of that, or is that different? If the PD funds that.
Professional development
Professional
funds.
development.
Yeah, those are the ones that go out to districts.
Yeah, that goes out to districts, the PD money.
Correct, but I mean, they can use that money for that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So that's the reason why we want to get it up there.
So I'm going to try to summarize this, represent the, what I'm feeling you, the direction of this prioritization exercise. Essentially, we are asking that you group the OELE items on the prioritization list and pull up the professional development request that was there.
Under the heading of educator workforce.
And yes, creating a heading then of education workforce, but in your details, you will have the program items that would make up that grouping. Additionally, we hope to have that represent a stronger prioritization for the KT funding. And I believe that's the extent of the further direction beyond, that departs from the representation in this table here. So I was trying to capture
Except
that.
professional development was going to be.
Professional development goes up as well. It's
Which
part of the
professional-
OELE request.
Which professional development, is that listed on this
Yes,
list?
it's, sorry.
It's going to be
It's
pulled up.
professional learning.
Yeah, professional
professional
learning.
learning.
OTL.
24.85 million.
Yeah, it's 24 point. You don't see it on your top 10 because it was a little further down. I think it was 12 maybe or something like that in the rankings.
And that narrative, Dr. Todd, with that professional learning, talks a little bit about a database that we would like to create for teachers to go to,
Right.
but the majority, probably, I think that's 500,000. So the balance would all go to districts. There is a formula in reg or statute for professional development, so it would be allocated out based on ADA to districts, and they would spend it on professional learning.
Good. Thank you.
So if you would, I'd like to ask the board to entertain a motion to approve the ABR prioritization process with the departures from the table presented that we have discussed. the OELE funding for retention, recruitment, retention, and professional development, the KET funding, KETS funding. Is there such a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we so approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? A second. Thank you, Holly. It has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
So this new combined category is number 3 now on this list that we're looking at here?
I think that's right.
I think that's right, Diane, yes. I have to go back to the, but I believe that would be the combined result. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Then we have carried that motion and completed a very, very important exercise of learning and deliberation, informing our advocacy. Brian, get busy.
Tweeted it.
We appreciate so much the board's participation and really being thoughtful and deliberate as we've talked about all the budget requests. Brian will be very busy, but I think board members will be very busy too, and the rest of the staff. Our job now is to advocate. Our job now is to inform and educate and advocate for all the things that we're really trying to do to get additional funding for our districts and our schools.
Well, Robin, you and your crew have just been so thoughtful and patient in structuring this process so that we could become even better informed in terms of our advocacy and better, you know, just really sharp decision makers in this process. So thank you.
If I may,
I just want to comment, I mean, the process that you put together really made us think and analyze when we were going through and go back and back and back and really have to choose. So I want to thank you for that structured process. It was difficult, but it was done in the right way and it gave us our individual voices. So thank you guys for that.
Welcome, thank you.
It was tremendous. I mean, I didn't look forward to it, but you guys,
Smart.
you did. I mean, the way you guys did it was very good. And will you give us an updated thing when this is done?
We certainly
So
will.
then, like you said, I think it's all of our jobs to start advocating to anybody that we know that will listen, so.
and I think I was going where Randy was, and that is that one of the things I know Brian is doing right now is hearing from other associations like administrators and superintendents and school boards, et cetera, about what their priorities are going to look like. And the more we can align those and synthesize those, the better the ask is before the General Assembly. So hearing some continuity across those sectors, I think will be really important. I like Randy's idea if we had even just a little card, you know, here's what our priority, our additional budget request priorities are for, as a State Board of Ed, and, you know, make sure that when we're out there talking with folks that we are able to reference those pretty consistently.
Chair Robinson, may I suggest that we take a quick break before we move on to the portrait of the learner?
Great minds, great minds.
We're rolling.
Yeah, we are really doing better on time than I had thought. So I think we've earned like a 10-minute break and come back and get ready for some more heavy lifting. Please come to order because we have a real treat in store. Another bit of hard work that you're going to really enjoy, I believe, to start the agenda for this part of our meeting. We're going to return to the topic of the portrait of a learner and thinking of it in not just in terms of our aspirations, but really in terms of the work that we want it to do. It took a bit of work to get it articulated. Now that we have it, what are we going to do with it? And to help us with that discussion, I'm going to ask that we give our attention to our panel, Sarah Snipes, Tammy Schiff, and we'll go into part one of this presentation?
Actually, to start off with, we're going to actually see your most wonderful video.
Hello, I'm Sharon Robinson, a proud member of the Kentucky Board of Education, and I have exciting news. After collaborating with and listening to citizens across the state, we have adopted a portrait of a learner for the Commonwealth. Built upon the hard work of many districts, educators, and volunteers representing communities across the state, we have identified 6 competencies that, when combined with strong academics, will create a deeper learning experience for all students. The 6 competencies of Kentucky's Portrait of a Learner show us that student academic success matters, but so does a student's ability to think critically and effectively communicate, while also being an empowered learner, productive collaborator, engaged citizen, and creative contributor.
I'm Lou Young, a member of the Kentucky Board of Education. In education, competencies serve as the basis for designing curriculum, instruction, and assessment, ensuring that students are well equipped for success in academics, personal growth, and future careers. Our Portrait of a Learner serves as the guidepost to transform our students' learning experiences. We've heard from students, parents, and communities that learning needs to be more personally relevant, more engaging, and more reflective of career and life challenges faced by students in our fast-paced, interconnected, tech-driven world.
I'm Dr. Jesse Bacon, Superintendent of Bullitt County Public Schools. Now more than ever, learning must go beyond the traditional academic content. We must also be more intentional about building communication, collaboration, creativity, and other skills that are so important for our students to thrive in today's world. Through Kentucky's Portrait of a Learner and our local efforts, districts across the Commonwealth can incorporate the identified knowledge, skills, and mindsets into classroom instruction, which in turn will prepare students for the real world with job-ready skills. As much as it is a beautiful thing to watch a student learn to read, it's equally important that they know how to contribute to the community in which they live. Our job as district leaders is to weave and integrate the Portrait of a Learner competencies into our curriculum and our teaching standards and practices to ensure that teachers are able to focus on these competencies in the classroom experiences and beyond.
I'm Andy Perez, a 6th grade teacher in Crittenden County and Kentucky's 2023 Teacher of the Year. I've watched students learn how to develop skills such as empathy, communication, creativity, and collaboration in my classroom. Getting these characteristics to show up in the classroom means rethinking how and what we teach. It means encouraging active learners. It means participation by students in their own learning. It means collaboration on group projects. It means encouraging students to be critical thinkers to solve complex problems in the world around them. I want to encourage a passion for lifelong learning in all of my students.
As districts across the Commonwealth implement locally developed or the KBE adopted Portrait of a Learner, parents and students will see the identified knowledge, skills, and mindsets introduced in their classroom learning experiences. We want all of Kentucky's students to have a passion for learning and graduate prepared for what's next, civic life, career, or college, and we can't wait to get started.
Thank you to both of you and Mr. Link for participating in that little exercise, and to the Division of Communications for helping to put that all together so that we can introduce Portrait of a Learner statewide in a communications effort. Thank you for inviting us today to present the materials and to, you don't know this yet, but participate in an interactive activity at the end to process and digest the information that we have to share with you today. I'm Tammy Schiff. I work with the Division of Communications to support the United We Learn launch and efforts, as well as the Kentucky United We Learn Council, and importantly, the Bold New Futures Standing Committee with Mr. Wallace. Today, we're going to be sharing some recently gathered information and feedback related to Portrait of a Learner and the potential for updating graduation requirements from the field and stakeholders in a presentation that we're calling in 3 parts, or as we've referred to it recently as the sandwich. First, we're going to review the initial insights that we've gathered through a survey developed jointly through the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support and the Communications Division. We reached out to districts who are well on their way in implementing Portrait of a Learner at the local level. And we asked them about their experiences, the supports that they need, and for some early examples of how teachers and students are bringing the concepts of Portrait of a Learner to life, real time in the field. Second, Mr. Wallace is going to share some first outcomes of a task that the Bold New Futures Standing Committee undertook over the last few months, gathering feedback from stakeholders. One of the key priorities of this committee is to do outreach to their communities about policy-related topics and issues. And this is a report that shares some of their first and early experiences undertaking this task. And finally, this is where you all come in a participative sort of way, and you're going to get up and move around again, which is also joyful. We're going to facilitate an exercise to walk through how to digest this information, through some guiding questions in a World Cafe kind of methodology, so you'll be able to move around the room and interact with each other. Thinking about what supports might be necessary moving forward for the field to be successful in implementing Portrait of a Learner, any remaining questions, burning questions, ahas, and what kind of efforts as a board and from the agency level we might be able to provide to the field to be really successful in the implementation of Portrait of a Learner for our communities and students. So first off, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Snipes from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support to walk us through the first pieces of data.
Thank you, Tammy. So just to first kick things off, I want to acknowledge the board's commitment to really lifting up that local work dating back into 2018 when several of our districts were already well underway developing their own local portraits. The board acknowledged that hard work happening in communities, as small but mighty of a group of that as that may have been at the time, and we now see that very work reflected in our state portrait with those very important additions of creative contributors. So just acknowledging that the foundation and the efforts the board has put in to really listen locally and lift that work up. And very proud to be part of the efforts to continue doing that as we learn from districts still operationalizing, making big moves, transforming the student learning experience every single day as they operationalize these local portraits. So thank you for continuing to lean in and supporting our work as we learn from local districts and communities. So just to talk a little bit about this most recent survey that we've asked districts to complete. Really, we wanted to lean in and investigate the implementation status. There are, as we've found, many different steps that a district can take along a continuum, if you will, to really operationalize a portrait beyond just the poster that we might hang on a wall in the school, right? That's certainly an important step in developing and publishing a portrait, but what comes next? And we really set off on a journey to learn where districts are and where they see themselves along a journey for implementation. So in a survey that we administered, we really wanted to capture the various stages of implementation across our districts who have current portraits locally, understand their needs for support and guidance as they move forward. We wanted to gather information that will help you as a state board and the Kentucky United We Learn Council make important policy recommendations and decisions. And then begin as our work in collaboration with the communications team, build a repository of examples where communities can really continue to learn and share from each other. I'm not sure there's a state in the country that does that better than Kentucky, and that's just one great step. And we have districts who are so supportive of those efforts to share their learning with others. So our goals for this research have really been to support that reciprocal relationship. We truly see districts as partners, and they have incredible wealth of knowledge to share with us in their own lived experience implementing a portrait. So excited to use that information to guide our next steps here as well. And then, of course, just to provide more of a comprehensive understanding, both for KDE and the board, of what this really is like on the ground for our students and teachers. So looking at a resource that was recently shared with us from UK's Center for Next Generation Leadership, after studying the field nationally and both locally in the state of Kentucky, we looked across this portrait of a learner implementation continuum. And actually, Meredith, if you want to skip to the next slide, there's a little bit of a chart there that breaks this down across phases. Now, while this could be linear, that's not to say that districts would follow that in any particular order. So it's beginning likely, though, with the development of a local portrait, moving into the publication and sharing that widely across their community and schools. Then moving into a phase of developing a performance assessment system to support that those set of competencies. Instructional design based upon vibrant learning experiences, working on community engagement in instruction and assessment, and then moving into locally adopted policies that support deeper learning instruction and assessment. And that takes us into this fully operationalized vision for an instructional and assessment system really anchored to a local portrait of a learner. So what we've done in our research as well is really find this natural alignment to the continuum that I just shared with you and the big ideas of United We Learn. You see creating vibrant learning experiences recognized across that continuum, as well as the need to develop performance assessments, which are certainly driving innovation as a priority for us as well, and collaborating with communities as they co-create local portraits and engage their community in those instructional and assessment supports as well. So for the survey and the research design itself, following the state board's adoption of the portrait, around November, we launched a survey reaching out to as many districts as possible, both individually contacted and through our statewide deeper learning teams to find who has a portrait. So on an array of having a finalized set of competencies, developing a set of competencies, considering developing, or not considering at the moment. As of June 23rd, you'll see there on our screen, we had 42 districts report that they currently had a finalized set of local competencies, and 37 districts were developing in the moment, just as a snapshot in time. So those are the two groups of districts who received this second survey of implementation, really with the thought there that several of those districts at the time who were in the developing stages likely had moved into publication by that time. So we asked some key questions. Looking across all of your grade levels, we wanted to ask them where they were in their work along those buckets of implementation along the continuum. We also wanted to ask them what services and supports would be most helpful to their next steps. Does their district currently have any locally adopted graduation requirements that directly align to their portrait? And then we just asked that they might share some examples of that district level work as well. So we'll just briefly go through here. What you'll see on the screen are some of those focus questions broken down along the continuum. First, we took a look at how folks across their all grades in their schools were developing work related to a performance assessment system. And you'll see those broken down into a few different components according to that continuum that we just shared. So developing performance outcomes, for example, you'll see that 5 districts reported that they had completed that step and had established a set of performance outcomes for different grade bands in their districts, while 17 currently were in progress of developing those outcomes and 17 had not yet started. Same goes for creating common rubrics based on those performance outcomes, developing guidelines or examples of performance tasks, conducting student-led conferences, conducting exhibitions of learning for formative purposes, and then conducting portfolio defenses for summative purposes. So if you notice their general consensus, you'll see consistency for the most part across the board and where our districts are self-reporting in terms of developing local assessment systems in support of a portrait of a learner. And here we just have a few examples of those that were given to us in the beginnings of our repository of examples. Out of Boone County, we see a draft of their developed performance outcomes. Rowan County working on senior defenses of learning at various grade levels in connection to project-based learning work and exhibitions being done there as well. And Shelby County creating a really powerful open resource tool for the future around a profile of a graduate dashboard. So very promising work. Again, just an eagerness to share with others across the state speaks volumes, I think, to the leadership within our districts as well. Our focus question 2 really looked in on those instructional design practices in support of vibrant learning. Many, again, of our districts reporting that they're just well on their way, right? This is active as a snapshot in time. They're in progress working on things like project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, authentic problem solving, conferencing with students, student voice and choice, and deeper professional learning opportunities. And again, we just have some examples that you can view on your own time more deeply if you would like, but Bullitt County really engaging with our project-based learning experiences at the 4th grade level with some incredible student-led projects, and Trimble County as well, looking at project-based learning as a major driver for this work. Our focus question 3, looking at how districts are looking at community engagement practices along with their instruction and assessment systems. So we'll notice, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of these work-based learning opportunities. Again, most districts reporting that they are in progress, but many more in this category saying that they have established systems and processes in place locally. Looking at inviting experts from the community into their schools, students who are working often on solving real community problems as well. And again, some more examples. We have the Purpose and Action program within Woodford County, also spotlighting the 6 to 12 Campus of Innovation, embracing PBL in Owensboro, and a Senior Community Service Day in Rowan County. And then as we go deeper into that continuum, looking at locally adopted policies, many of our districts are telling us they're just not quite there yet, and that feels quite natural, right? If we look at that previous data in developing some systems to support local policy around graduation requirements, 32 have not started yet, though we know 3 have completed and 3 are in progress. Local assessment systems are being developed to support the portrait of a graduate in those districts. Schools have some flexibility in scheduling their courses, and advisory systems are in the process of being developed as well. And we're lifting up an example from Frankfort Independent Schools. At their high school, they are actually in year 8 of implementing senior-wide work-based learning placements. They are looking at having their board discuss the implications of adopting a local graduation requirement tied to their portrait of a learner. But this requirement for seniors as a senior defensive learning is tied to their local portrait. And really happy to say that when we reached out to see what supports might be necessary and most helpful in their next steps of implementation, we gave districts the option to select all that apply. So if you're a math person in the room and this doesn't quite add up for you, that's why districts could select as many as they felt would be helpful. We had 28 districts out of the 40 responding say that they would really look for guidance from the agency to see, to create local systems of measurement for these competencies. We also saw that districts are looking for more deeper learning opportunities and supports, and that they need support in community partnerships to support that deeper learning. And since seeing that a great need in the community was to have guidance around developing performance outcomes and indicators, as of Monday, actually, on our website, we have co-created with teachers, as we brought to the last board meeting, that set of performance outcomes and indicators and an accompanying body of guidance. So already we've been responsive to that greatest area of need for our districts, and excited to just say that that's our starting point. And as a last data point here, we did ask districts, where are they in locally adopting those local graduation requirements? As it's an emphasis for our Bold New Futures Committee, we thought we would see what exists out there currently to learn from. A majority, 72% of those 40 districts are currently reporting that they do not have a local graduation policy in place. However, 22.5% are currently in development. And on that next screen, we can actually get a little bit better of an understanding, reporting only on this survey as a snapshot in time. Logan County and Shelby County reported that they do currently have local graduation requirement policies in place, while the districts on the right-hand side there say that they are currently in some stage of developing and considering a local policy. And we'd just like to share with you, we reached out to those two districts. Shelby County responded just to give us the language for consideration that they use at the local level. They state that in their graduation requirements, students must successfully complete a defense of learning, including evidence of profile of a graduate competencies and a post-secondary plan. So that's just one example that we currently have of local policy in place. And just to wrap up with some takeaways and next steps from this particular set of data, 79 of our 171 districts have had a chance to respond to this survey based on their self-reporting that they either had a finalized set of competencies or were developing. And 40 of those did complete the survey. And we're just learning that communities are at various stages of implementation and development, but numbers really do seem to be growing, especially with the support of our deeper learning teams across the co-ops in our state. And we're seeing very positive perceptions around the current progress from the district level as they work with us on this. And we're being responsive to our districts so far and seeing what those greatest needs are around guidance and support for developing those assessment structures to get the ball moving there as well. As far as graduation requirements go, we're seeing implementation of defensive learning as part of that performance assessment system really taking hold across our districts, and we're considering the implications of that. And we are acknowledging that most districts are in those developing stages across most of the continuum for their portrait of a learner. Very few districts, as you saw, have fully implemented any policy changes, but many are shifting as they move along that continuum as well. And so as next steps, we just hope to continue to solicit this survey. It's still live. It is on our KBE Portrait of a Learner webpage. We continue to build that repository and learn from our local districts to guide our next steps. We hope to continue to build a repository of examples of district level work, and just want to continue to communicate progress. Always love to be here and have a seat at this table to share this work with you as you make those decisions and support and be the champions that you've been around this work. So really just thankful for the collaboration and energy that's been part of this. So we will kick it over to Caleb to talk a little bit about the connection to the Bold New Futures Committee.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here and to represent our Bold New Futures Standing Committee with the United We Learn Council. It's an honor. Congratulations to our new chair and vice chair, and also welcome to new board members. Very excited to see everyone here. I want to go ahead and talk with you all a bit about a Portrait of a Learner reflection task that we as a group recently partook in. I'll start with saying that in April, we decided that our work is going to focus on building capacity and increasing engagement among communities, families, and students to support policy implementation that supports the reimagining of the education system in the Commonwealth by collecting data from every district to understand the value of skills like those on state and local portraits of a learner to inform aligned changes to state graduation requirements. And so, of course, this task that we recently completed is a major element of accomplishing our near-term goals. A version of potential graduation requirement amendments, I believe you all have access to those yourselves as board members, based on your approved additions to the early graduation program to include a demonstration of learning, were shared with our committee and also with the Accelerating Innovation Portrait of a Learner subcommittee. And we conducted an interview-based task. We solicited early feedback and insights related to Portrait of a Learner and potential graduation requirement amendments from stakeholders in their networks. And so, of course, these networks include those of folks who are currently partaking in our Bold New Futures work. The objectives of this task relate to hearing directly from Kentucky stakeholders concerning the proposed changes to graduation requirements to help inform your direction with this work as board members. What kind of listening and messaging is needed to explain to Kentucky stakeholders the current landscape around Portrait of a Learner development, adoption, and implementation within school districts across Kentucky, and the perceived impact, positive and negative, of modifications to graduation requirements, prioritizing portraits of a learner. And so with this, we took our task is to reflect on the different networks of which you are a member, using guiding questions. We gather feedback from a few members of our identified network, and if time allows, identify a network adjacent to our own and solicit feedback from members of that network as well. Moving forward, these task questions address numerous topics, things such as, are you familiar with the concept of a portrait of a learner? Reflecting on your own school experience, can you think of a project or lesson or assignment that would have allowed you to develop the knowledge, skills, and dispositions outlined in the portrait, and was that experience valuable? From your own perspective, what are some of the potential benefits associated with the proposed changes to Kentucky graduation requirements to incorporate demonstrations of learning? From your own perspective, what are some of the potential challenges associated with those proposed changes? All right, so phase one of outreach provided 23 responses from the committee's networks. These committees will continue to engage with community members and stakeholders, including educators, students, and families over the next few months. We're going to continue gathering qualitative opinions and perspectives to inform near-term goal decisions and also future activities. And most participants were familiar with the concept of Portrait of a Learner. All right, so our focus question, moving forward, reflecting on your own schooling experience, can you think of a project, lesson, assignment that would have allowed you to develop the knowledge, skills, and dispositions outlined in the portrait? Was that experience valuable? The themes that we saw with this question, the responses that we received, include cumulative and positive. They discuss the cumulative and positive impact of these school experiences, and also how positive relationships with teachers are key in this effort. Our next focus question, dealing with the potential benefits associated with these proposed changes. We identified a number of themes in those responses that we received as well. Such things as the demonstration of learning, that this would give students a sense of ownership, and also that it focuses on skills needed in the workforce. And then we also asked about potential challenges associated with the proposed changes. We identified themes there. There was a focus on implementation challenges, a focus on assessment and grading, teacher and student time, and also on equity. So for some takeaways from this very early pulse, Portrait of a Learner, there are positive perceptions around the value of Portrait of a Learner and related competencies. There is a need for continued efforts to build awareness and understanding for Portrait of a Learner. Communities are at different stages and phases of development and implementation. That's a common theme that we've seen across stakeholders. And then also when it comes to graduation requirement changes, there are a few ideas just to consider here. There is a pre-existing perception of portfolios, and data indicated, or the information we have indicated, that there is an overlap there in some people's thoughts. Potential implementation challenges for schools and teachers exist. It's important providing equity and supports across all student groups, and then also to think about defining grading and performance assessment. All right, so when it comes to our input, recommendations for supports needed to implement change in those graduation requirements. Define benefits for all stakeholders, develop measurement and assessment system that will support the change, collaboratively develop an implementation plan with districts, increase administrator and teacher training and planning time, invest in communications and community engagement plans for all stakeholders, and then also identify and provide supports for students with special needs. Our next steps in taking this information and working to achieve that near-term goal that I mentioned include conducting additional research with representation from all stakeholders. That includes our L3 districts, our students, families, and educators. We'll continue efforts to enhance community engagement and build awareness around concepts of Portrait of a Learner. And then also, we'll continue to learn about the lived experiences of teachers, students, families from the districts who already have graduation requirements tied to their Portraits of a Learner. And examples were mentioned previously of those. And I will turn things back over. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're in part 3 of the sandwich, the last piece of bread, if you will. So we're going to kind of get up and move around a little bit. We're going to do a quick O-change-O underneath these tablecloths. There's some surprise things to do. So we thought maybe break up into groups of 5. We could do the count off, or you could just self-select, whichever. There's actually 3 stations, so we're going to ask the communications team at that table to relocate for a brief little bit. So there's a question number 1 over there, 2 is here, 3 is there. And in this exercise, and Mary, if you want to we've got kind of 3 guiding questions, and you can take it from there, and we would ask those from staff and others. You can feel free to join in. The idea is to take a station, we'll be at a station, discuss amongst yourselves, kind of put your thoughts down on the paper that's on the table, and then we'll do a timing thing and move to the next station so that everybody gets one chance to get to all 3 stations, and then if time allows, which we hope that it does because we all spoke really quickly, which is really nice, that you'll do another loop through and can add your reflective thoughts to what others have put down on the pages. So for guiding questions, first off is from your perspective, what are the ahas, challenges, benefits, watch-outs, burning questions from what you've heard today of the first 2 parts of this presentation? Second, in thinking about the 4 habits that we've adopted in terms of our collective workflow, inclusion, empathy, co-creation, and reciprocity, which do you think are those that we all need to lean into when we think about Portrait of a Learner and the potential for graduation requirement changes? And finally, if we're thinking about a timeline or a runway of any potential changes going forward, what supports are needed from either the KBE or KDE, the agency, to provide and ensure success for districts? And when you think about runway, that's still one of those things that's something to be thought about and is flexible in terms of that runway, where we might kick this off, and especially as you're thinking about what has been presented here today about where the districts are in their implementation of Portrait of a Learner and where they are relative to including some requirements within the graduation requirements that are tied and aligned to the Portrait of a Learner, where they are. And in thinking about these, this runway and the supports necessary, I would encourage you to think about, we often think about our own little tiny microcosm of a world, but think about teachers, think about students, and importantly, think about families and parents and guardians as to what might fall on them as we move forward relative to portraits of learners and
You know, I appreciate so much this update and the snapshot of where we are, but I want the board to just think about, we really do want Portrait of a Learner to be that Archimedean lever. I mean, we want it to have power. And so as we go into this part of this presentation where we, you know, kind of get at some of these implementation questions, I want us to be thinking about, you know, where we are, what we can do, and also just kind of take us down memory lane just a little bit, Chair Young, Vice Chair Young.
So, yeah, thank you. I did want to just thank the team. I really, really appreciate your efforts to scan the horizon to make sure we don't get over our skis. So the idea that we would get too far ahead of districts as we move forward around implementation of Portrait of a Learner is really important for us to think about. And Jason has been cautioning all along, you know, don't get too far ahead, make sure folks are ready to move along in a circumspect, thoughtful way. And so this information is really, really helpful. Sarah, on the first one, getting those real data from anywhere from 23 to 49, 46% of districts is so helpful to have an environmental scan of the field to know what's happening out there. And I get to see Portraits of a Learner all the time. I hang out in Fleming County just for fun. But not everybody sees that. And we see that more than half the districts aren't even in the conversation yet, which is, again, perfectly okay. That is not an indictment about what's not happening in districts. It's just a pulse check, an environmental scan of where we are. So I thought that was really, really helpful, and all of those data resonate with what we see at UK Next Gen, for example. So that's really exciting in the conversation, and your takeaways around the importance of more communication. I don't think we can over-communicate here. And then that smaller sample of the 23 folks who gave us feedback, I think there's really important cautions to be mined from the Bold New Futures group there. That negative transfer, Holly and I have laughed before, we were the only two teachers on the planet who loved writing portfolios. We're pretty sure. So, but these are not your granddaddy's portfolios. But why would we expect folks to know that yet? We haven't communicated that in a really deep, thoughtful, broad way. So I think that's important in the conversation. Again, thinking about not getting ahead of our skis in this to make sure that we're bringing folks along. And I don't want anybody to panic on the graduation requirements, because this is one of our first open meeting conversations. Cool and Bold New Futures have been talking about it for a while, and I have an idea about it, and Meredith's been working on language about it, but we need to really have thoughtful conversations about the length of the runway. So the last thing we want districts to do is panic that we're throwing something down on them in terms of regulation that they simply are not ready for. But I would remind everybody that thanks to the leadership of the teaching and learning team, the early graduation requirements that we have in fact approved as a board are a whole lot like these. If we're saying this is really good for kids who want to graduate early, then we have to genuinely ask ourselves, isn't it good for all kids in keeping with our commitment to Portrait of a Learner? So do I think we're actually going there? Yes, but I think that the pace is to be determined by this board with lots and lots of rich feedback from the field. So what does that runway look like without panicking people, without imposing something on schools, districts, classroom teachers, kids and families that they're simply not ready to receive. So we'll want to make sure that folks are ready to have a very candid conversation about that. I sure love me a Portrait of a Learner, and it's so pretty and it's so important, but we've got to be able to hear the folks who don't think my baby's all that pretty. So I think those are the kinds of conversations that we need to have, and I would encourage you to be candid about that. It's a pretty baby, Jamie. Beautiful baby.
And all the potential in the world is there. So I think the challenges for us can be addressed with these questions. Would the reporters identify yourselves? Okay. Well, let's start with Alyssa.
Yeah, my first board meeting. Speak to everybody. I was really excited to hear about this because Monday morning we're doing a professional development in Christian County over profile of a graduate. So I've already said I've written down all the questions that teachers are going to have for me because I know they're going to have a lot. But first, I appreciate all this hard work because I can see that a lot of hands have gone into this, and it's awesome because this is what is best for our students in Kentucky. So I appreciate that. But from our first question, an obvious aha, this is what our students need. Dr. Todd talked about critical thinkers. These competencies are developing critical thinkers in our state. And so I think that that's a major aha. And, questions that we have for sure are, what is this going to look like for a teacher in Christian County? Is this going to be a lot more work on me? Is this something that I'm going to have to stress over? Or am I already doing these things and just need to integrate the vocabulary and competencies into my everyday life, because we want this to be easy for teachers to be able to say, I'm going to buy into this and I'm going to do this really well for my students. So let's make sure that we're giving teachers resources, and where can they get those resources. I don't want to take anybody else's thunder, so I'll move on to question 2 in case anybody else has, I don't want to steal their ideas.
Okay.
But for question 2, we actually kind of struggled with that, because when it said, just to maybe pick one, we thought all 4 of those habits were really important. But we looked at that first one of co-creation, and I was saying in Christian County, we've taken the six competencies and we've made it look like Christian County Public Schools look. We have our colors, we have our logo in it. We got to decide on the icons for the competencies. So I can say Monday morning when I sit down with my colleagues, this isn't something that KDE sent to us in a package. We've taken what they've done and we've made it look like Christian County Public Schools. And I think that's important. Districts need to take ownership of that, because when you have ownership, you have buy-in. So that co-creation piece, I think, is really important, especially in these initial stages. And then for the third question with the timeline, this is a fluid process. This is not something that's going to be rolled out next year and everybody's good to go. So I'm a teacher, Holly is a teacher, Patrice is. We said we need to get out some data boards, some trifold boards, and start moving districts along the line. So continue that data pulse checks, see where districts are, so we know this is where our state is, because we don't want to continuously roll out things. And Christian County's further ahead than Trigg County, and Trigg County feels like so frustrated, like we're behind everybody else. So I think just making sure that you're considering what districts are doing and making sure that we're making the right decisions for them. So.
Wow.
Thank
you. Okay. Teresa, you the next? No.
I was in her group.
We were
all together.
Okay, so.
What she said.
So I don't think mine followed the questions exactly, but I think I hit on all of them. Great conversation. One of the big takeaways for us across the 3 tables was that if we think about that Archimedean lever, we have to be really honest. Assessment and accountability is really the lever. Portrait of a learner, maybe the assessment and accountability will only, without those changes, we will never get to use the portrait of a learner as our Archimedean lever. So really highlighting how important it is that we continue to move forward in a very intentional way about innovation of assessment and accountability. I also think it's really important, and it felt threaded across the tables, that we not miss the natural integration of portrait of a learner work with our DEIB work, especially as it comes to social emotional learning, meeting the needs of the whole child, and equitable access to opportunity and resources. Portrait of a learner is at its very core a whole child effort. We need to continue to co-create tools. I think this one does get to the 4 habits. So the department is not designing tools for teachers and kids. They're designing tools with teachers and kids. So really committing to that in the deployment, which Sarah, you and team have already started to model. And then I think this came out strongly in the conversation between Lee and Randy and Steve. We have to apply the leadership muscles that we have around good change theory to this process in an intentional way. So knowing that we are running now with our early adopters, but that we aren't going to leave other folks in the dust. We're going to leverage those early adopters to help others near them make these changes. But we're also going to, it's on that table in front of you, Caleb, right there in front of you. What else did we say besides early adopters? Read upside down. Come on, Caleb. Elementary teachers read upside down all the time. Anyway, whatever good change theories we were talking about, we really have to be careful about that. Lee, you and Randy might want to add, but we know, Jason and I sidebarred, the Heath brothers remind us that people don't really hate change. They hate change implemented badly. That change that feels like somebody's making them do something that they don't understand or that they don't know the why. Simon Sinek writes about that all the time. So we've got to be strategically smart as a leadership team about how we help navigate forward. And that means going slow when we need to go slow, go fast when we need to get fast, but live up to the 4 habits, I think. that's it for us. Oh, and except unless anybody else on the team wants to. Thank you, thank you. Thanks, Alyssa. We're starting applause. Thanks to you.
Yeah, I kind of got, I was voluntold, so.
Me too.
Initiation.
Or hazing, hazing, Jamie.
It happens.
On the first question, one of the things we had talked about is really validating and uplifting the work that's already being done in districts, because there's a lot of good work. And getting the story told, us doing the storytelling, maybe working with Tony and the staff of having us tell the stories, the districts tell their stories rather than somebody else telling the stories for us. We have to be proactive rather than reactive. And creating excitement around the work through that storytelling. But also, really, we have to lean into the legislators having buy-in to this work. We can do all this work that we want to and come up with these great ideas, but if it's not enacted on the other side, it's for naught. So, on the second question, we really leaned into the co-creation, especially having the student and family voices at the table. And the inclusion and making sure that we're including everyone, socioeconomics, ELL, disability inside and outside. And then the third one, a lot of the discussion centered around the continuum, because we have, especially from the data that came out with where our school districts are at, there is definitely a continuum. You have schools and really communities are not ready to engage in this work yet. Right. They have cultures that they're just not there. There could be really just not positive environments for that work, and we have to recognize that and be able to allow flexibility along the continuum. That's what, when I first read some of the things on the graduation requirements and starting ninth grade at this time, I'm like, but what about these districts who aren't there? If we're going to put something into place, we've got to allow and acknowledge that flexibility along a continuum. And really, RJ brought up, the why for the students. That really this is for the students. It needs to be by the students. I remember a saying of, don't do something for me without me.
Yeah, in Oregon, they say, don't do something about us without us. Yep.
Right. That's very good. Well, it looks like you guys got a very rich discussion, and I would say this was pretty provocative from the degree to which folks were just kind of intensely interacting around these questions. I think in all humility, I think Lou described it well. Right now, we're running with the early adopters. We spend a lot of time with them, and behooves us now to be thinking about how do we enlarge our community of interest, the community of those who are aware of what's going on, and begin to understand from them what's in it for them, and see if we get some clues about how to fan the flames for the embracing of the portrait of a learner as a standard, as an outcome standard, even a credentialing standard for our students. So thank you so much. We are on a substantive journey. I think we're really proud of where we are, but we recognize that in all humility, we've got challenges ahead, right? So I appreciate that. So thank you all, Caleb, Sarah, Tammy, for coming and presenting today. Now we're going to look at the work of the local laboratories of learning. We've got Associate Commissioner.
Can we have the KAR first on the agenda?
Do we? Say again?
We got to approve the minimum requirements for high school graduation.
Not yet.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was on mine next.
Oh, maybe, sorry.
It's under portrait of graduate. Under part 3, the next is 704 KAR.
That's just the early look, right, Meredith? We're not taking action on the reg. No, this is just the first look. Yeah. No, this is just the first one.
So in October, potentially, if if the board is amenable, we would bring forward a formal regulation as we typically do with a staff note and the proposed changes. In your folder, you do have in red the language that the Bold New Future Committee responded to. That was part of their task. And in blue in your folder, we've put some other proposed implementation dates. Should you want to have the graduation defenses of learning happen further down the line with the graduating class of 2029.
So this is just an informational item.
That's correct. That's right.
Just making sure. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you, Randy, for keeping us.
Steve's making me, he made me zero in on that.
You two are going to have to stop fighting.
Yeah, we're going to separate.
We're not fighting, he's just keeping me updated.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How are you all today? We're excited to talk to you all today about the local laboratories of learning, and you've probably heard us reference those about calling them L3s, and we're very excited today that we have Travis Hamby from Allen County and Brian Creasman from Fleming County, and we really want to give them the opportunity to share the work in their districts. And so, Brian, we will start with you.
Good afternoon. I know I speak for Travis, we are very excited to be here to talk about the work we are doing as an L3 district. Being the first cohort, one of the things that if you look at the districts that's in the first cohort of L3s, we're connected in some way or another, that we've been working together in some form for years, and now we're working under the L3 cohort. So in Fleming County, we have been on a local accountability journey since the summer of 2021 when we actually entered the L3 cohort. And since then, we've been really focused on trying to figure this puzzle out, this equation of accountability at the local level. So hope to share a few of information about our local accountability model. Before I begin, I brought two sidekicks with me. Michelle Hunt, she's our Chief Academic Officer. She really works with David Cook and Sarah Snipes with the L3. And also Ketsy Field, she's the State Director of Cognia, who is an invaluable partner for us through our local accountability. We've been partnered with Cognia for years. So this was just a natural evolution with Cognia. Lisa Eldridge, our assistant superintendent, would have been here today. Unfortunately, she had an unexpected death. She also works with the L3s. So the next slide, if you look at these are the L3 districts, the first cohort. And with Fleming County, we've really focused on the local accountability model. We've already had a graduate profile since 2018, and also been doing the innovative performance assessment since 2018. So this was a natural fit for us to really focus on local accountability. With local accountability, it is highly important for transparency to be key. So we've really tailored our approach around that transparency model that we actually picked up from our work through Priority Schools. And I was telling Dr. Foster, it's really interesting that when I was coming to the state board a couple of years ago, it was for something not good. This is for something good now. So it's good to be on this side of the table talking about something positive. But with the local accountability, and it's really important for RJ and Elisa here, it's about doing things with schools, with students, with teachers, not to schools, to students, and to teachers. And with our local accountability model, we call it the measures of quality. We actually started with the goal of measuring what matters most to kids. Typical accountability models start with things in Washington, D.C. and hopefully drills finally down to making change for students. We flipped that. We started with interviewing students through focus groups, through surveys, trying to understand exactly what really do they care about. I highly doubt any student in Kentucky is saying they look forward to state testing. So we knew that we had to really, with our local accountability model, to really start out measuring what matters most to them, you know. And we asked questions that really tried to capture their experience each day. We talked about the quality of food, the quality of transportation, the quality of the learning environment, the quality of teaching, the quality of opportunity, the quality of access. And then we started developing our model around that. Next slide. Right now, Kentucky has two districts with fully operational local accountability models. Kenton County, which is in northern Kentucky, they are ahead, but we're not in a race. They just started earlier. They're doing a lot of work around community-based, the work of John Tanner. Dr. Webb and his team are doing a phenomenal job with this. And then Fleming County, where it's not community-based, it's local accountability, starting with measuring what matters most to students. You can see the timeline on the next slide. Again, we started in the summer of 2021. Throughout the fall of 2021, we really developed our measures of quality, really what we're measuring, the techniques, and the tools. We launched in January of 2022. Throughout that spring, it's been a journey. We've learned what not to do, which is probably more important than what to do. We've went down black holes, and we've had to call a friend to get us out. I mean, we've really tried to utilize what the L3 is about. Research, development, innovation, trying to get to this model. And then in the September of 2022, we launched version 2, and we immediately started working on version 3, which we'll release in September. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The next slide. The ultimate goal of a local accountability system aligns perfectly with what the state board is doing with the profile of a learner. So we take our graduate profile, which we've had since 2008, we refer to those as the bridge performance indicators. Then we take our innovative student performance assessments, and then we really try to measure through different means than just standardized testing, really how are students ready for the next level through innovative performance assessments. We've had promotion requirements in since 2018, so students in grades 3, 6, 8, and 12, they have to meet particular readiness standards through our performance assessments. So what our goal is trying to measure this through a local accountability system that really talks about the quality of learning, but also the readiness of students away from the high-stakes testing. Next slide. So we didn't think we'd ever get to this point. We now are working with Susan Lyons and CIE Paul Leather in regards to developing our theory of action. You know, 3 years ago, if you'd have told us we'd be working with a psychometrician, one, I would tell you I don't know what that is, but now we are. We are also working with Jennifer Stafford at KDE. Her team has really been helpful over the past month. We're unlocking this formula, trying to get to this. I would love to tell you we are 6 months from unlocking this, but we are still a long way from doing that. But with that theory of action, if you look at that, it tells us if, as a district, if we focus on things like culture, instruction, student attendance, then we should also be able to impact that at the school level and measure that. So we're working, you know, again, we're learning as we go there. And then some things, I know many of you follow the blog that we do. We release a weekly blog. I've talked to many of you about local accountability. Some of you will get texts when we have breakthroughs. I know I've driven the commissioner crazy on those texts. But these texts, everything that we do, we try to do so that it can be replicated across the state. Doesn't require a lot of funding. We do not have programmers. We do not have a department of local accountability that's just focused on this. So one of the things that we've really tried to do is utilize tools that's available to every school district in Kentucky for free, because that way we take that equity piece out of the picture. So when we come up with a way to do this for free, I think that's a huge breakthrough. And so I will let people across Kentucky know via text.
Michelle Hunt says you make every dollar scream for its existence.
Well, hey, that's good to know. But if you look at some truths about local accountability, I talk about local accountability daily with someone across Kentucky or across the nation. And they're all, the common questions always come up. You're trying to lower expectations. Absolutely not. We're trying to increase those expectations at the local level and make it highly transparent and held accountable to the local community. And I've heard Dr. Foster talk about this through our priority work, that the state can put all the accountability on a school district, but until the local takes accountability, nothing will ever change. So we've really utilized our training with priority school districts, continuous improvement, and matched it with our work with the local accountability. They go hand in hand. And the other thing is, it's not about anti-testing. We're just trying to figure out how to test better and not doing something to students all the time or to teachers. You'll see in a second, we still have achievement built into the equation. However, we prioritize student growth because it isn't so demoralizing to students and to teachers. Next slide. So here's some of the sources of data that we utilize when we look at local accountability. For the first time with version 3, we will pull state achievement data into the picture. Dr. Stafford is helping us with that. Then you look at student growth data. We have been in the past a MAP district. We have switched to iReady just for the purposes of getting formative data. iReady will give us more formative data throughout the year. We're also utilizing research-based rubrics from Cognia. And one of the things I want to stress is what we are comparing our school district to is school districts not only in Kentucky, but around the world, looking at the best school districts, public, charter, and private, and seeing, can we do that? Can we be one of those high-performing school districts compared to this extensive research Cognia has done? Then we utilize observation data and then stakeholder surveys. We survey stakeholders, and one of the things I take pride in, I look at every comment, no matter if it's outrageous to if it's really beneficial. And we utilize this data. We do not wait until the end of the school year to make changes. We do that in real time thanks to this local accountability system. And then the next slide, I'll show you some versions, just our continual progression with our local accountability. The good thing is you can access all of this. One of the things with L3s is we have to share what we've learned. So you can go to our website, you can go to measures of quality, you can access version 1, version 2. You can't access version 3 yet, but that's coming. But the first is that version 1, this is very simple tables. Again, we're learning how to put this thing together. Version 2, we started utilizing Google to start doing these visuals. And then on version 3, the next slide, this is the formula that we are working with Susan Lyons, Dr. Stafford, and also Cognia to develop and to make sure that we can give an accurate measure of quality of learning throughout the school district. One thing I will say, our goal is to ultimately get down to schools. However, we are not ready for that, and also we did not want to put anything, another thing on anyone's plate. We have really made sure that we're not, adding anything to the school's plate right now. So we've kept this at the district. But I will compare version 1 to version 3 like this. Version 1 is that old bag phone that we used to carry around and we thought we were cool with. Version 3 is that iPhone 15. We've made huge advancements with this. With the formula of the local accountability system. And then if you look there, the dashboard, we figured out how to, this looks very familiar with the Kentucky State Report Card. This is done with free software that we've not had to pay a programmer or anything to do. There's free software out there that does this. We've watched a lot of YouTube videos to figure this out, but we figured it out. So, with version 3, we thought it was time that we thought we were ready, that we could pull in achievement data, growth data, have it in a formula, and also we thought, we're ready to try to mirror what the Kentucky State Report Card looks like. So that will be released in September at the Continuous Improvement Summit in late September. And then if you look on the last slide, these invaluable partners, we work closely with the UK Next Gen. Cognia, without Cognia, we would not have been able to pull this off. And then now the Department of Education and CIE are really coming into play here. But that doesn't mean that Dr. Foster, Mr. Cook, and Ms. Snipes have not been involved. They have been involved the entire way. But we're now ready to start talking, some numbers here in terms of a formula.
Very
More
impressive.
clapping.
More clapping.
We'll let Travis go, and then we'll take questions after both.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Christman set the bar very high for this presentation, so certainly they've done tremendous work. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Glass and the State Board of Education for really leading this work forward in the state of Kentucky. I've been doing some of this work for a minute, and so it's good to see some of this really coming to really into being, if I could say it that way, across the state of Kentucky. So super excited to be part of that. And to David and his office, who are always there to help support us in our thinking and trying to figure things out when we get stuck, and our UK Next Gen partners who do that as well. Karen Perry is just such an asset to us in our school district. So we have been on a journey, and so we're going to take a little different approach in our presentation to tell you a little bit about how we got to where we're currently at and our thinking. So when I started in the current school district in 2019, we immediately started working on a new vision for our school district and where we wanted to go. And so we took on the task of doing much of the things that many school districts in Kentucky have done in creating a profile of a graduate, which we call our profile of a patriot. We spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders, having various meetings, students, teachers, community members, et cetera. I think, while we have a state profile, it's really still important to have these conversations at the local level about what they want for their students. What does that look like? A graduate of Allen County Schools, what is our community value? And so there's real power in that conversation, and then to look at the alignment to the state profile is affirming. Because we see consistently that those profiles, those competencies of the profile are so similar to one another. And so our profile is there. It was developed out of all of that data that you saw on the previous slide. We have then really talked about if we're gonna value this, what are those learning experiences that need to happen in our classrooms to help make that a reality for our students in Allen County. We, through much conversation, landed on the instructional model that you see on the screen. I'm going to highlight a couple of those for you. We are not, by any means, have we mastered any of these, but we have pockets in our district that are exploring and trying to move these learning experiences forward in our district. The next screen actually shows you that one of our primary targets right now is really focused in on authentic learning and what that means for students. So grateful for the partnership that we have established with PBL Works that's helping us on a district-wide implementation of project-based learning. And John Mark Francis, I should have introduced him. He is my community co-lead, by the way, in this work. So doesn't work for the school district at all, but stands with me in the L3 work and helps me facilitate and lead each and every meeting that we have locally. So he's going to talk to you in just a moment. The next screen just shows you kind of what's coupled with that is the meaningful assessment piece, and I would highlight the performance task piece, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment toward the end of our presentation. But those have kind of been our focal points for this year as we move forward. So we're going to kind of transition into the L3 work and how that's connected and moving us forward.
Sure. Well, the visioning and profile and modeling work in which Allen County Schools had already engaged really laid the perfect foundation for the L3 work when that came up. As Mr. Hamby said, I'm not a district employee, but I am a resident of Allen County. I'm a graduate of Allen County Schools. I have 2 children in the district, and so I was very excited to join this work and kind of rethink how we approach local decisions in this process. Our local coalition is comprised of 29 members, other parents, district personnel, but also elected officials and members of our local economic development board. I checked my calendar before coming up here, and I've been involved in the nearly 2 years since this work commenced in over 40 meetings and discussions at the district level. I know many, many more have taken place among district personnel. But in every one of those, there's been an intentional focus on ensuring that we're seeking out the voices and input of those who aren't in the room with us, not just those 29 individuals who are there. So very early in the process, every member of the local coalition went out and conducted empathy interviews. Mr. Hamby's staff interviewed students across the district. They rented out a local restaurant and invited families in and offered them a free meal in exchange for their ideas and feedback in order to hear the voices of those that have historically been underserved and underheard in this type of process.
Excuse me.
As we did all of that work, the coalition, we noticed that one theme continued to emerge among all those stakeholder groups. It's a theme that you all know well from the United We Learn Vision for the Future, and it is that our students, or the people of Allen County, wanted us to work with them to reimagine how we measure learning in a way that goes beyond an assessment that's a snapshot and a single instance in time, and looks more deeply at our community's own local economic and social and workforce challenges. So with that goal in mind, we formed the questions you see on the screen there about how do we empower students to take more ownership in their learning, how do we assess that, and how do we communicate these changes with the district. So as we go on to the next slide there, you'll see that the way that we did that is a storyboard, kind of outlining our vision for the district and what this new approach would look like for them. I'm not going to go through each of the squares on there, but you'll see that we wanted students' interests and passions to drive their learning. We wanted them to have the opportunity to develop multidisciplinary skills that they could showcase through internships and presentations. Those of us in the community wanted students to receive feedback and be able to receive that in a way that prepared them to get better and to be able to see examples of what good work looks like. We also wanted to systemize the collection of artifacts that showcase the student learning that took place, so that when graduates leave Allen County, they're not just leaving with a diploma in hand, but they have a portfolio that they own that they can take with them to post-secondary institutions or into the workforce to show how they've grown over time and how their skills have developed. And all of this is built upon that locally developed profile of a patriot that's in close alignment with the profile that you all have talked about at the state level this afternoon.
And so if we're going to measure those things and really create a system where our students and our teachers and our schools are accountable for the things that our community has said are important to them, we have tried to make that come to life at each one of our schools. So we have 4 schools in our district, K-3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. We have developed performance outcomes connected directly to each one of our competencies so that they are measurable in what it looks like in a primary school, what does it look like in intermediate, middle, and high. You can see those. I would attribute some of this conversation work all the way back to working on the competency-based program that was through David's office several years ago. And then we've evolved and continue to partner with some partners, Envision learning partners, to help us develop these in our district. So,
and if you'll go on to the next slide, the last panel in that storyboard showcases one of the ways that we're really focusing on this, and that's defenses of learning in ways that accommodate individual needs and preferences. That work is definitely in full swing. As a parent, I found myself in the schools more often than ever before to see my own children's growth. As a matter of fact, that's my daughter in that last panel right there at an exhibition night that occurred in Allen County. But these defenses aren't just about making presentations. Mr. Hamby shared with us a quote, and you can click through the next couple of slides and see a couple of the examples of this. You can go on to the next. He shared with us a quote from a student that really underscores the rigor that this shift has produced, and it also kind of underscores those perseverance skills that students are gaining as a result. A student at the high school, she said, "I've never worked so hard on anything in my entire life." Mm-hmm. And it is hard work. It's been hard work for the district. But it's certainly paying off for the district personnel, for the faculty, for the staff, but most importantly, for the students who are getting these community-based skills that are going to be helpful to them whether they stay in Allen County, whether they move across the Commonwealth, or whether they go out and change the world. There are those skills that they're going to absolutely find critical and find helpful at every step. It's about showing, the next phase is about showing to the community that we're doing what we've been asked to do, or we've asked the district to do. And so we kind of shift back to that accountability portion.
And so we've been wrestling with the questions, right? How do we know we've been successful? And much like what you heard Dr. Kriesman talk about, is looking at various data points around that, specifically collecting data from our exhibitions and defenses of learning. I'm not going through those questions with you, but I will jump to the graphs. You can see we're trying to collect some of that data and make meaning of it. That's just about attendance. This is a second grade example. But again, if we're going to be accountable to our public, we've got to show them, right, the data that supports the work that's happening in our schools. Can you go back a slide for me real quick? That just shows how many students, based upon the performance outcomes that I showed you a moment ago that make meaning at second grade, they're measuring those in those moments of student presentations or showcasing student work, and then we're reporting that back out and creating these graphs to show to our community. So effective communicators, second grade, end of the year, we had 64% showing that they were competent as effective communicators and 83% showing accountable collaborators. So that's second grade. We have another year with those students to meet those outcomes. So those good data points that we're looking at. The next slide is just how's our people feeling that are coming into our district. Some perception data that you can see overall very positive. Green and blue are positive. Going to the next slide, I think it just kind of moves us to what's next for us. We're continuing to work with one of our partners to say, you know, when you look at the profile and you measure the profile and you think about the change that has to happen in the classrooms for those things to happen, we don't need you to throw everything out. We need you to bring everything up. So how do we redesign activities that you already, we're not saying you have to recreate, but we can help you and support you as you work to redesign that task so that it does focus on those outcomes and still stays focused on the standards that we want our kids to master in our district. So we're continuing to work on those particular pieces. And then we also are working on a dashboard that is in very much, this is just a prototype I put out there for you, but we're looking, we have a data partner that's come alongside us that's trying to figure out how we can collect all of this data, warehouse it, and continue to showcase also that student learning data, attendance data, and other data points that our community has said is of interest to them, reflect that back out to them, but have it in one place so our teachers can access it. It's going to have a parent portal where parents can log in at any time and see how their students are performing against those outcomes that we have put forth as a community, that our community has defined for us that they want us to measure and monitor. And then finally, I just would say the L3 work itself, I hope what you've heard is those elements of inclusion, the elements of empathy that we've done through the empathy interviews, the co-creation, and the reciprocity, that we are being accountable to one another as we work through this process. And the tools that have been developed, this is, again, not the first time I've tried to lead this work, and I would tell you those elements that I've just mentioned are what I believe is going to lead to the success of this work. It's not built on a leader. It's not built on a school principal. It is built on a community conversation. This is what our community desires and wants for our kids in Allen County. And so let me put it this way, I am hopeful that we have built something as a community that will stand the test of time and that we can continue to work together to figure this out. So appreciate the work that I think we're going to be able to learn from Dr. Kriesman as they've created this beautiful dashboard. I want to steal components of it with mine.
Free.
Mine is not free. I'm paying a price tag for my data service that I have. So certainly hope that we can continue to work together to figure that out.
Another kind of reciprocity, right?
Chair Robinson, just real quickly before you, John Mark, you pointed out something that I think is really crucial. Two things that I want you to hear from this. You heard very similar conversations in terms of the kinds of things that these districts are doing, but they're not exactly the same. And one of the very key elements of L3 work from the beginning was that we only made one requirement of an L3 district, and John Mark is that requirement. We said you cannot be in the L3 work unless you have co-chairs of a local coalition, one from the district and one from the community. It wouldn't have worked had we not done that. We didn't say anything else. We didn't say you have to do a certain work, you have to think about a certain thing. You do what means the most to your community, but you do it as a community. You don't do it as the local district telling the community, this is what we're going to do. And that's why these two gentlemen are here telling you about their stories, because they took that community approach to building this. So I know we're a little behind, Chair Robinson, but maybe a couple of questions before.
Well, I do want to ask if there are questions or comments from members of the board. Please. Dr. Todd?
No, I just want to say I'm blown away. I really, this made it worth the 3-hour drive. Other things too, but
2.5.
Just really, really proud to see the progress that's been made, and it gives you hope that there'll be others who'll follow your examples. And I want to keep more track of you than what I have known up to this point, but I really appreciate your coming.
And I would say to Fleming County, just some observations about what they share. Their willingness to take risks and put these data out there in the spirit of L3, that they're doing this generously to share with people across the district. And Brian does that not just inside Kentucky. He's a frequent ask for the American Association of School Administrators to share this kind of work about what's happening in Fleming County, and he always does that cheerfully and generously. And that big vision for high achievement at the global level, I think John Mark said it, that this is a rigorous process when designed and implemented well. And then to the team from Allen County, this community co-lead is powerful. Travis, you mentioned something I think is always important, and this is not about throwing out everything we've already done. We still master standards in Kentucky, but we can make some simple shifts that ratchet up the level of engagement and authenticity for students, and a portrait of a learner can help us drive toward those sometimes simple shifts. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's an easy lift, but it's not all-consuming if we do it well. And then congratulations to both teams in L3 for living the 4 habits. They were stamped across every slide, so great job.
Yes.
I just want to say I'm thankful to the team finally to start showcasing, as we put on our little celebrate and showcase the great work that's being done in Kentucky as opposed to hearing about elsewhere. So thank you for coming and making the drive here, but also thanks to the team so that we continue to showcase Kentucky, celebrate what we're doing here, and also publish what we're doing here so others can see it too at the same time. Just don't keep it here because we've got to get it out there.
It has been exciting to see. I listened to presentations when we had our conference, the United We Learn
Yes.
sessions, to see the growth. I mean, it's not a stagnant thing. It's something that's living and breathing, and it's exciting to see.
I would echo that also, that it's truly, we are truly now focusing on the learner and looking at, I equate it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've got to get those basic needs satisfied before we can teach them anything, or before they'll even want to know. And that quote, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, is very evident in your projects. And involving the community, I think that's a big stakeholder that we don't tap into enough, because we're all in this together. And the ultimate goal is for them to come out and be good citizens, that they'll take what they've learned. They can learn anything if they want to. And I'd love to come and visit both your districts sometimes, because it sounds really exciting and a place that I would want to be if I were teaching.
Think you'd be welcome. Yes, Brian, please.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just like to say this. Travis and I, we were speaking before this. As a board, I know there's going to be a change. I will say that anytime I text or called the commissioner, he picked up or responded. Let's finish this. Let's finally see something through with this work with the L3. No matter who's in the chair, we've got it's a once-in-a-generation moment that I talk about often in my blogs, that we have a chance, and public education's the world's worst at never finishing something. We change as the moon changes. We can finish this. You've got 18 school districts now. I know there's other cohorts coming on board, but we want to finish this. Absolutely. And if you will back us, we'll finish this, and we'll finally see this through. But I can't say enough about the commissioner and his support. I mean, we're out there. I mean, we are way out there on the limb, and the work that the L3s are doing. And he's always been supportive of what we are doing, even though it may sound crazy at first. He was there to back us. So, thank you.
Well, I appreciate your saying that, and I really appreciate the board's interest. It's late in the day, but we've started something, and our hearing about what we've started, and it's like holding ourselves accountable to be sensitive to, well, what do we need to now nurture what is going on? We've got the portrait of a learner that involved conversations at the local community level, and parties of interest that don't always come together, and we end up with something that is an articulation of outcomes that just, it inspires our sense of responsibility to every student. We've got a community of L3 districts that are really leading us to believe that we can actually document and count what truly matters. Not just what's easy to measure, but what we really care about knowing, and do so in a way that has integrity, on which our communities can build some pride. We've got the Cool Council that wants to report next, involving a set of colleagues and participants in trying to bring life to 3 principles of change: vibrant learning, high integrity accountability, and innovation in assessment in particular, and community engagement. You represent a vanguard of interests now that I feel we are partners with, and we are responsible to as continuing colleagues. So I'm going to venture, speaking for the board, and say count on us. As long as you keep us engaged with you, and we understand what you need, because we're learning too. You represent the models that we want to support into now and into the future. You represent how we got to grow up to be what you will need now into the future. So I appreciate so much your taking the time to share with us and to be the pioneers that we not just following and watching, and we are with you and we're learning with you. And you've been so gracious in your willingness to share. So thank you again. Thank you, staff, for being there with these folks. We're all out on the limb, so my dad used to say to me, if you're going out on a limb, go way out. So somebody will care and will know you're there, and they'll recognize what you're doing and make it worth their interest for you to survive. Whatever that limb, whatever that is, get to the point that you want to be. So, hey, we're out there with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Oh, this has been so exciting because, I mean, I really feel like working with you guys and our commissioner, we really have started something. Chief Performance Officer Karen Dodd and her colleagues, David Cook, I'd have to say, Caleb, you are really busy these days. It is so cool to see your work with the different components of this change initiative. So bring us up to date on our Cool Council and our CGSA grant.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us here today, and we'll be brief. I know we are standing between you and dinner, so we will be try to be quick. First slide. This is just a reminder that we have about 72 members. It has dropped down just a little bit as people have had other things come up in their life and need to drop off. Audrey Gilbert is still our chair. We had a co-chair, Sarah Hatton. She has also had to step down as co-chair of the council. We looked at when we had the vote for chair council, vice chair of the council, who else put their hat in the ring for that, and it was actually a very close call between Sarah and Penny Christian. So Penny has agreed to step up and as an interim be the co-chair for the council. So she will be recognized as such at the November convening. And then we still have the 3 standing committees, the Vibrant Learning Experiences, Accelerating Innovation, especially as it pertains to accountability, and Building a Bold New Future with Communities. And so Caleb is here today to talk about what has been going on with the Bold New Futures Committee.
Absolutely. It's great to be before you again in just a few hours' time. We'll start off with taking a look here at a photo of our group that we took back in at the fall convening in 2022. And you'll see here, our group represents multiple perspectives. We have a lot of different stakeholder groups involved with our work. So community members, we have family members, educators, students, and parents. Julie is, of course, represented here in this photo. All right. Our group is community oriented. And so we think about with communities, we're focusing specifically on community and family engagement as those concepts relate to the United We Learn Council's core tenets and also the tenets of the greater United We Learn vision. And so thinking about collaboration and innovation and vibrant learning experiences and how all of those require that community-minded, that community-oriented mindset that we're trying to move forward with. Additionally, we are policy-focused, and so we take a couple of different approaches here to our work. Our group has been tasked with developing the Commonwealth's education policy framework, and we're doing that in response to stakeholders' needs. Stakeholders envision such ideas as community collaboration, of course, very important to our work, but also innovation and vibrant learning experiences. And imagine those coming to life in their schools. Our group continues to survey the landscape. You saw or heard about that earlier today. We're working to aid in that development and to do what we can with our voices to help with the progress we're making. And so I'm not going to read this in its entirety. our 6-month goal from April 2023 because I read it to you previously. But we're focusing on engaging with our communities, talking with families, talking with students, supporting the policy implementation around Portrait of a Learner, and ultimately working to inform the aligned changes to the state graduation requirements that we, of course, talked about earlier today. And so with that, realizing our goal, we're working towards achievement through surveying stakeholders to gauge their perceptions. This includes district leaders, school leaders, community members, parents, students, and more. A real emphasis here on seeking broad representation in our analysis. We want to be sure that we are collecting information that will provide us with as broad of an insight as possible, ultimately working to ensure that we are building a future that is for Kentucky, by Kentucky. We meet regularly, we collaborate with our fellow council members, including those who belong to other committees, and so the initiative, the task that we talked about earlier today is one example of that. As I mentioned previously, we have worked very closely with our Accelerating Innovation Group on that task.
All right. Back to me. So I've already mentioned that we have a new vice chair, interim vice chair. We're also coming up on the 1-year mark for the council. So we did just send out a survey asking them how they think things are going, asking them if they would like to recommit for another year, and if they're going to be attending the upcoming convening in November. So that is still out, so I don't have those results for you. It is something that I will share with you in October after we have a chance to look at those. But the way it's looking right now, we know that we've lost about 5 members so far. I still have about 20, maybe a little over 20 people who have not yet responded. So waiting on those responses to come in, then we'll take a look at all that data and be able to share all that with you in October. Primarily, we are looking at the convening for November 2nd and 3rd and working on that agenda. One thing that then Chair Young asked from that during the kickoff meeting was that the council come up with a moonshot. What is it that you really want to achieve based on the themes that came out of the what was compiled by the Coalition for Advancing Education? So over the past almost year now, they have been doing a lot of work to see kind of where things are, doing a lot of research, things like that, a lot of learning going on this year. So in November, we really want them to nail down what that moonshot is. So we're going to spend a good part of day 1 really coming together and talking about what is our moonshot. We then want to move into what will success look like if we achieve that moonshot. We intend to go into affinity groups. So students, what would that look like for you? Educators, what would that look like for you, et cetera. And then really hope, using that, so once somebody leaves the council, they'll be able to look at those and, we need to report out on that. How are we doing based on those things that you told us you want to see as we move forward in implementation? So this is really important work I think that we need to do, and for each of the committees to really get their heads wrapped around and consider how do we as a committee contribute to that overall moonshot. So those are really the 3 big things that we intend to focus on at the November convening. We're also working on drafting another process. Last time I was here, I shared with you the council process, just really how we get to making a decision, how a recommendation will come to all of you. Now we're down to the committee level. What is it that the committees need to do to get to that point of handing off a recommendation? And that's something they've been struggling with. So we'll be sharing that with the council members in November as well. We will likely be looking for a few new members given what we're seeing as far as those dropping. So we will very likely go back to those that we said no to previously. We want to make sure that the diversity is still there on the council. We want to give first dibs to those who have shown interest in the past, but then also asking our members if there's any any stakeholder group that we've been missing, or whatever that needs to look like. So we'll have a little bit of a discussion actually before November, because we're hoping that the November convening will be the first meeting for any new members. So we're kind of working behind the scenes as a leadership team to get all of that figured out beforehand. And as always, we have a monthly newsletter. For those who are new to the board, if you do not receive our newsletter and would like to, just let me know. I'll make sure that you get added to that list. And I've also included the website to the council. So all of the meeting minutes and agendas are out there. Any work that is done or met on, everything is posted out on our website. So you can always go out there and look. And that's it.
I will just add, just real quickly, and I think in October, you're going to hear a little bit more from me as the state CGSA director. It's hard to believe we've done as much as we've done, and we're just now coming to the first year mark of the grant. And the grant is a little bit bigger than just the council. So we'll talk about that in October and share about years 2, 3, and 4, 4-year grant. So we're not even close to where we've got funding for all of that, and we've got partners that are working with us. So this has been an exciting first year, but we've got some more to go and more things for the council to do, and I look forward to sharing that with you guys.
So, David, just remind us all the objective, the goal of the grant, is to...
It's basically what the council is really starting to work on. It's to take a look at, ultimately, it's first about student experience, but then from there, what does assessment and accountability look like that aligns to those student experiences? Because if we want the kind of experiences we're talking about, Chair Robinson, we don't have an assessment accountability that measures that. That's the bottom line. So we need to make sure those things align, and that's, if you wanted to boil the grant down to the simplest terms, that's what the grant's about.
That's what I wanted. Thank you. Comments, questions? Again, we've started a lot of stuff out there, guys. I feel like we're responsible for keeping track and being good stewards and really passionate cheerleaders for this work. Thank you very much. Thank you again for the privilege of serving as the chair. This is, it's fascinating, and I just want to talk with all of these folks for a long, long time, and I know you do too, but we also have had a long day. We're going to, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn as soon as I tell you how we are going to have dinner this evening, and entertainment and fun.
Following adjournment, you'll have a few minutes to go back to your room if you would like, or certainly you can just chat and debrief the day. 6 o'clock is when dinner will be available. It'll be at the tables right outside here and then out on the deck. Following dinner, we will have cornhole and a bonfire, should you be interested in partaking in such fun activities. So 6 o'clock for dinner. All of our guests are welcome to join us for dinner if you don't have to head back.
Thank you. Well, after such a productive day, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Thank you, Steve. Does someone to second? Second? Okay, thank you, Jamie. I doubt that there's a discussion, so I'll just call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all.